Oh, dearie. All righty then. So here we are. Oh,
Hi, everybody.
she's here too. However, Lauren is still up on the mountain, and so is Jim. So
They
it's me
got
holding
snowed
down
in.
the fort again, although I don't think for too much longer. It's starting to get cold outside.
It snowed.
Hey, Alex, how's it going? Um, this is Keith Bowen, and this is Hard Rock University, and we do micro scale hard rock mining as the primary uh, focus, although placer mining is also done. I do the hard rock mining, and Jim, who does the placer mining, he's in the middle of putting together a camp for a mining exploration team up in the mountains yonder, about 30 miles line of sight probably, and been having a little fun with snow and rain and things like that. So he's been working like a madman for the last month or so. We haven't seen much of Jim lately, but as dihydrogen monoxide. Okay, Alex, that's the Oxio, huh? So you got me confused. What can I say? It said new YouTube account. I presumed you were a new subscriber. Yes, they got the roof finished just in time, and Lauren's been up there helping them trench and do the plumbing. Got there was already a well drilled, but they had to put a pump in and all of the plumbing that's associated with a well and get it run to the house, and then there was um, the wastewater stuff that needed to be done. So again, they've been working their little tails off up there, and uh, I don't know. Jim's been watching. I don't know if Lauren is there yet. Lauren has, I think, Starlink, and that's how they're accessing it. So, not sure how good they're seeing it or anything like that. But as far as I know, that's what's going on. The previous communications were before I went live, so I have no idea how things are going up there in terms of communication. And it's kind of important to me because I was scheduled to meet with Lauren at his shop tomorrow and get the rear spring bushings changed out of my truck before heading out to the mine tomorrow afternoon. But I don't know. We'll have to see. It's getting bad enough that I'm thinking I'd rather postpone the trip a day than to head out there, um, especially as I'm supposed to be pulling a heavy trailer back um, before getting those bushings done. So we shall see. Hello, Kim. How's it going? So that's kind of a, I'm not sure, but I mean, this is real life here. Things happen. So, anyhow, um, that's a question I have. And so I'll find that out by later tonight. I don't know, Alex. It looked to me like the weather was clearing up, but we'll see. Well, right now I don't have them, Lars, and that's the problem. It's messing with my pinion angle. I also have a feeling that's why the truck feels a little squirrely at times. Hey, Dave, how's it going? Um, Did you get my message that that sample? Well, actually, it was a composite of the samples we took on that trip with you the other day. Came back less than detection limits. That was less than 0.02 ounces per ton. So, uh, plan is next time we're in the area, go up there and pull the stake out of the ground and leave it at that. We had a great trip though. Had a good time. So it was well worth it anyway. Um, let's see. Trying to remember what we did this week. Things there's so much stuff happening all the time right now. Um, we went up on that mountain to stake that claim for somebody, and Jim says it's snowing now up at the cabin, little one. Nope, there wasn't, Dave. And anyhow, so uh, that was a fun trip.
But there was some interesting silvery stuff in the concentrates that we still need to deal with.
The the weather was beautiful for our trip up there. Then it kind of went all to hell. We had a good time, and Alex says that his friends who mine sapphires at Canyon Ferry just shut down for the season due to the weather. No, Kodak, we showed them the information at BLM, and they have agreed to relinquish any claim they have to our stuff. So that's it worked out. A lot of it had to do with just BLM is so far behind, and that's where people look. Is there an active claim here? And they look at BLM, and it's like, well, there's no active claim. Well, it had been over a year since we had actually staked it, and BLM still didn't have it on their computers. Okay, so we can understand the confusion. I suspect that a lot of people will be having similar problems until they get that caught up, because everyone does kind of rely on BLM to do that.
Which is why when you actually see stakes in the ground, assume it's still an active claim until you find out otherwise.
Yeah. Especially as the claim owner had filed his notices of intent to hold also. So if anyone had just checked the county records, they would have seen it. But again, everyone just relies on, BLM. So once again, the federal government lets us down. Ooh, big surprise. We are working out at the ranch trying to elute some resin using a formula that Tricky Dicky sent us. And all the chemicals you can get at your grocery store, basically. But we were unable to electrowin clean gold onto the cathode after the elution. Now, that doesn't mean that we weren't getting gold out of solution. A lot of stuff is laying on the bottom of the cell. So we're going to be collecting all of that and then smelting it down. It's already been collected and dried. And next day we have out there, we'll go ahead and smelt that and see what we get out of it. If Lauren's not able to help me tomorrow on those spring bushings, I may delay it till Wednesday, so we may be able to get that done tomorrow, little one. Yeah.
Okay.
That is correct, Chris. We just went straight to the gold solution because, as far as we know, we don't have any mercury, and we'd be perfectly happy to get silver. So we just went straight to solution 3, and I have no idea what else is in there. There's more sediment, it looks to me, than could possibly be just gold, which makes perfect sense. There's probably other stuff in there. So that is It might be, Chris, to say this was our time is a little limited right now, so we want to go straight to the money thing and see what happens. We theoretically will clean it up to a great extent during the smelt, but we shall see what we shall see. Lead in the ground? Not sure what you're talking about, Shaggy. There is some lead in the ore, not a huge amount. Um, and anyhow, so we may want to use solution one anyway, just to get rid of other stuff, Chris. Also, um, I was trying to dissolve the steel wool from our first electrowinning test, and I put it in muriatic acid, and there was very little reaction. The muriatic turned a very light green, greenish yellow, and that was it. There's no fizzing or anything like that. And so I took another piece of just plain steel wool and dropped it in some battery acid, basically the same strength as battery acid, and didn't see much of a reaction there either. They're both sitting on the countertop doing their thing.
Sure.
The hydrochloric is covered.
As much as anything can do its thing in this weather.
I'm concerned that the temperature might have something to do with it. The reagent temperatures were probably in the neighborhood of 40 degrees. So that may be our problem. And so that's a question. When we get back to things, the original plan was to tomorrow morning, I was going to head over to Lauren's. We were going to work on replacing the rear spring bushings. I was going to come back here. We got a couple little things we have to do on Tuesdays, and then we were going to head out to the mine. Probably going to delay that to a departure on Wednesday morning. But yeah, Chris, I presume mercury. Nitric acid would probably have worked fine. The problem is I know there were chlorides in there. So, doing okay, Patriot. Got lots of irons in the fire right now. No, we are not, Chris. It was suggested by someone that there might be a very light coating on the steel wool to kind of prevent it from oxidizing. Don't know if that's true. I know that the stuff that was put in the electrowinning cell, the surface is clearly different than the unexposed surface. It's kind of a matte medium gray. So hard to tell. The very end of the I just twisted some together at the end and everything. The very bottom end of that, it was clearly plating something onto the steel wool. And so as my understanding of physics, I would say as this steel wool is generating, I don't know, hydrogen or oxygen from electrolysis, it's creating an upwelling in the solution, and that upwelling would, of course, be bringing fresh ions first to the bottom. So that's my thought on that. So I had another little cell that I had previously made, which has a pump in it and stuff. So I started trying to use that at the end of shift. Didn't have enough time to really do much there. Did you chrome plate it? That is a good question, Chris. Makes perfect sense with the steel wool that was in the electrolytic cell. And for those of you who aren't that familiar with what we're trying to do here, let me do a quick little diagram. Oh. First, we're starting with loaded resin. Resin from our leaching circuit that already has gold and other stuff stuck to it. And take that, put it in a beaker, cover it with a solution that is supposed to be able to pull the gold out of there, put a little stir in there, add a little heat, and do that for hours. Then we take this solution here and put it in an electrolytic cell where you have a positive and a negative. Now, this is steel wool, and initially I tried a stainless steel anode here, hoping that it would not corrode. It did corrode. And what Chris is saying, and makes perfect sense to me, as this stainless steel corrodes and it puts chromium and nickel and stuff like that into solution here, goes over here and that plates out, and now you have you've got steel wool that's now plated with chromium or nickel, essentially stainless steel on the outside. That would make sense. I did not try, let me write that down. Oh. Check. Plain. Good Lord, what's going on here? A wrinkle in the paper. Come on, undo, you stupid thing. Wow, tough to get a wrinkle out there. Check steel wool with HCl. Okay. The plan was to take this steel wool and put it in an acid hope you can see that well enough. And then that would leave a little residue left there, which would contain the gold. That's the plan. We're getting a lot of sediment down here and not much on the steel wool. Now, this may be because we got too much voltage, or, I'm not an electrochemical engineer, so I may very well be doing something a little bit wrong. And then we got an issue. They used a platinum electrode, Alex, in the tests. I do have some carbon electrodes, and that might work. And let's see. So anyhow, we shall see as we get back. Hey, Jeff, how's it going? That's a possibility, Chris, although I think I'd want to go to a clean solution too. If you plated anything with this, would it make it stronger? In general, it'll make it thicker, which would make it stronger. But plating gold onto steel structurally is not that much better. Let's see. Kodak. Let's see. I was running 3.3 volts, and I was getting 0.4, 0.5 amps with very little surface area. I wouldn't be surprised, Rock. There's going to be a certain amount of just plain trial and error. Kind of, sort of, Dave, although we're not cementing it. That's not the plan. It's also possible if, and this is a big if stage one, let's see if stage one actually elutes the gold, actually puts it into solution, we may also be able to just precipitate it with like sodium metabisulfite or something like that. We shall see what we shall see. The laboratory that investigated this for the government, that's not what they did. So we're just trying to follow their process and go from there. And, oh, hey, how's it going, Jason? Yeah, but you do it a lot more directly than I do. So anyhow, I do have a sample of that at the lab right now. Hopefully we should know by the end of the week how much gold actually came out of the resin in this batch. Now, this batch here, when we took the solution out of there and put it in there, we mixed fresh solution and put it on the resin again. And it also got some stuff out of the resin, but it's not as dark as the first batch of solution, which is kind of what you'd expect. There's usually kind of equilibrium reactions. The way you would normally do this is you would take this elution, put it in the electrowinning cell, and then run the solution back to here. So now you have fresh solution without gold in it that can pick up more gold, and just keep doing that until this resin here is clean. That's the theory. And we shall see how it works out. Right now, it's very small. We had 50 grams of resin, 200 milliliters of solution, very, very small scale. We don't want to mess up loaded resin. The resin is running 1% to 2% gold. And so we want to try things on a small scale first so that we don't wind up messing up some stuff that's got a fair amount of gold in it. That would be undesirable. We have all winter to figure this part out. So we're not in a big rush on this. The big rush is to get more ore, leach more ore, load more resin. That's the, that's the priority. Now, another interesting observation we had today, out at the mill, we have a conical bottom agitation tank, not too bad for one shot, which has a stand here, and there's some plumbing underneath it. And then we have some of those IBC totes, those intermediate bulk containers. And we have, this is pregnant, this is agitation, and this is barren. And then we have the pad behind it and a pregnant pond. So we agitate, we dump onto the pad, and then it percolates through the solids, comes out as a fairly clear liquid into the pond. Then we pump that to the pregnant tank, to the barren tanks. Now, we have a problem here. It's called low temperatures. That's possible, Alex. Don't know. I'm going to wait till I get the results back from the lab first. It says we did a good job of getting the gold out of the resin before I worry too much about anything else. If this solution doesn't get the gold out of our resin, then we don't need to worry about what we're going to do to this solution. We need to find something else. We may, in fact, if we took and did it in a bowl with the resin in the bottom, solution on the top, maybe a fabric, something like this, and then have the cathode up here, and the bowl itself is the anode, then we might be able to drive it off of the resin with the electricity directly onto the cathode. So this is something that kind of simplifies that whole thing. We'll have to see. We can do that too. We're doing it the easiest first and see what happens. But anyhow, we have some cold temperatures coming up, and for quite a while, the temperature is going to be oscillating between 40s, 50s, like that, to freezing or a little bit below. Then there's going to be the occasional well below freezing, possibly, but then eventually it just gets really cold. But in that intermediate time, when it's just dipping below freezing for, at night, if we can just keep these tanks and plumbing warm enough so that they don't freeze, we can theoretically still keep things running. Now, what I did last week was around the base of this, where this plumbing is, I wrapped a tarp and just tied it up there with a ratchet strap. These tanks here, we had some old tarps, plastic tarps, and I covered them completely. And it was very interesting because about noon when we got out there, this was 5 degrees C. These were 31 degrees C. Huge difference. Now again, most of the sidewalls are just open to the air. Here, these are on the ground, so the ground can provide some heat, but they were completely covered. But that's an amazing difference. Now, 25 degrees centigrade is, 30,
50
40,
degrees.
50 degrees Fahrenheit, my
Pretty
wife
dang
says.
close to it.
That is a lot of difference for just a tarp. And that's, pretty interesting. So we may just wind up covering the agitation tank with a tarp too. Okay, I'd say there's lots of possibilities, Zeoxio, but the first thing to do is make sure we actually got the gold out of the resin. That's the key.
And if we didn't, that resin is going to be dried and smelted so we can find out what it says.
Yeah, and then Eva will fire assay the resin too. Well, Pokevase, 95% recovery of what? Our gold has to be dissolved. Okay. No flotation or gravity separation will come close to getting 50% of our gold because it's running 80% passing 6.8 microns. This is 2000 mesh gold. So you have to dissolve it. Now, 95% recovery, that's not unusual for an agitation leach. You're not going to get that from anything but an agitation leach on something like this. Yes, we could theoretically heat them, Shaggy, but it's out in the middle of nowhere. We'd have to haul in the energy source. So that creates problems. We can be using propane or this or that. As this is mainly a test and evaluation pad, doesn't make sense for this particular application. If you had a fair number of tons with some really good grades going every day and you could keep feeding it during the winter, yeah, that would make a lot of sense. We're also trying to see what effect the temperature has on the leach kinetics. Does it change how much we get out of the rock? Does it change how fast it deposits onto the resins? Things like that. Yeah, you could do stuff like that, but again, with the size surface area we're talking about, you're going to spend a lot of money to make that happen. And like this week, the last time we saw sun was Thursday. It's now Monday. That creates a problem. Uh, and so, no, I haven't. Again, Alex, we when you're talking about the actual leach solution, um, to deal with the leach solution and the kind of quantities that we would need to do, would get extremely expensive. You know, that's one of the problems. The direct leaching solution is running less than 15 parts per million gold. Okay. That's a lot of energy or a lot of something you got to do to that solution. On the other hand, in 1 minute, the gold from that solution is in this much resin. All we got to do is get it out of the resin, you know? Yeah, the problem is um, the passive solar would have to have freeze protection. You'd probably go with a glycol or something. Hey, Adam. But it's awfully hard to get positive energy input at below freezing. You know, how are you going to keep your leach solution above freezing when your solar system's below freezing? Um, oh yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. It all costs a lot of money. Okay, by a lot of money, I'm talking. Okay, let's do the math.
Thousands of dollars.
Let's say, just for the sake of calculation, that we are running 1 ton per batch. Okay. And we're running 2 batches per week. So we're looking 2 tons of ore per week. Okay. That means we've got 4 tons of solution per week. Now, if we do it very carefully, we can probably have about 2 tons of solution being cycled back and forth. Okay. You know, it's in the tank, we dump it, it goes into the pond, we run it through the resin, it's sitting there in the barren tanks. As soon as we dump the tank, we throw it in there. Now, even there, you're going to need 4 tons. Okay. No, that's right, because 1 ton each, so we need at least 2 tons of solution. Okay. We need to keep that, let's just say for the sake of argument, at 50 degrees Fahrenheit, 2 tons, 24/7, 7 days, well, 24/7. Okay. Now, how much heat will you have to require when this solution is sometimes covering an area of 200 square feet? Okay. That's going to lose heat very rapidly if you don't have like a pool cover, an insulating pool cover or something like that. That's what I'm saying. Now, mind you, this is all out in the middle of nowhere. Nobody is there.
All y'all city folk ain't getting this clue.
There's somebody there 6 hours a day, 4 days a week to watch all the systems. It's a little complicated. This is a test pad. This is not a production pad, And so that's why we're not worried about any of this. This is like, I don't know. Well, Lars knows it's like breadboarding. When you breadboard an electronic device where you just put stuff on on a board and kind of hook them together, you don't worry about the cabinet and the this and the that and the other. It's just, do the electronics work? That's all. In the future, we might worry about it. Right now, we don't have enough ore to keep it busy over the winter. And so, again, why spend money to acquire a capability you can't use? And that's where we're at. This is test. This is not production. It may seem like production for a prospector scale sort of thing, but this is a test thing. We're only doing about 1 ton a week. That's not production. And could you do that? I mean, the generator itself produces enough waste heat in the exhaust to do a lot of good, but we're only there 6 hours a day. The generator only runs while we're there, because if we ran it when we're not there, then it would possibly catch on fire and burn up a bunch of expensive stuff, and there's nobody there to notice. Yep. Oh, I've got a tank heater for a electrolytic cell, but again, you have to run a generator. It can only run 6 to 8 hours a day, 2 to 4 days a week. What do you do about the 3 days we're out at the mine? It's just off. That doesn't work well. So we're not worried about that at this point in time. This is not a problem because we don't have the ore to try and push the system like that. And so, again, it can be done. This whole thing could be put under a tent, and the tent could be heated with propane or something like that. Certainly, technologically, quite feasible. Financially, completely unjustified at this time. Okay. We don't know, Alex. That is the problem. Yes, it is fairly high grade. Not as high grade as we thought it was at this point in the body. But no, it is a small ore body that we can identify. It does not look like it's going to be a massive type ore body, the sort that's conducive to large tonnages, 10, 20 tons a day of ore. No, I don't see that happening. I can see, even if you had enough people to really work it, and it went to greater extents and still managed to stay at the same grades that we've seen, a couple tons a day, production. And then you'd be mining it out pretty quick. And this is part of the issue. I mean, if we had a whole mountain of stuff, if we could just dig in one side and take off a hilltop at 1 ounce to the ton, and the only negative was it had to be leached because it was really fine stuff, we would have an entirely different situation. But that's not our situation. Very small, unknown extents. And so far, everything that's showed up is saying it's not as good as we'd hoped it was. And so it doesn't make sense to spend a lot more money to acquire a capability. We may be walking away from this one. Hard to tell.
If we do, we'll walk towards something else.
You are absolutely right, Alex. We do not have the budget for a $100,000 small scale exploration program, that sort of thing. That may be true, Adam. You always have to keep that in mind. We do not have a defined ore body of significant extents. Okay. And that is a serious issue to think about. So we may very well be walking away from this one. In the meantime, we're establishing, as I call it, we're putting tools in the toolbox. Okay. Have you ever had a situation where you're going to fix something? It's like, well, I could have somebody else do it for me, or I could get the tools and do it myself, and it's going to be a wash. You know, I'm not going to save any money by doing it myself because I got to buy all these tools. But once you do it, you've got the tools and the knowledge. And that's the situation we're looking at. What we are doing is using this opportunity to provide a significant amount, not a large amount, but a significant amount of decent grade ore to learn all the processes and develop the equipment to implement all those processes. And so, you know, for all I know, next summer we'll work to deal with Jeff and be working one of his mines, or Dave Van. He's got a mine. It's not really within transportation distance of here, but we could be there in, if we had a car instead of the Minor Bago, in about 2 hours. It's not that far away, but you know, we need tools in the toolbox. Yes, you are absolutely correct, Alex. This is unconventional. We are, in many ways, doing this like an artisanal miner in a third world country. They don't have drill programs. They don't have all that stuff. They just got to kind of dig it and process it as they dig it. And in fact, the techniques that we're developing should be readily applicable to artisanal mining in third world countries. And that's a good thing for the world. If we can help small miners in third world countries, I don't know, as I am not keeping track of this. I'm just doing stuff, turning in the things. But I'm sure it's in the tens of thousands. Okay. And a lot of this is, you know, I brought a lot of, like that RC46. Just that, I think, runs about $12,000 right now. Let's see. Let me see what we got here. Keen Engineering catalog. Let's see what the current price is. Now, I know I don't want to get a hard copy catalog. I just want to.
You don't want to get a hard copy?
No. I want to see, get the catalog, No, I want to look at the catalog. Get the catalog, what the heck? Minimax Dredge, Keen Engineering Inc.
Just go straight to their homepage.
That'd be nice if there was a link that had.
Just go straight to their homepage and look at shopping or something.
Let's see. Well, okay. So where's the homepage? There we go. Here's a homepage. Fall means sale. Shop. Okay, let's try that. Do they have a search? No. Recovery equipment. Let's try that one. Dredge. Shaker table. ST1 shaker table. That's a new one. Looks like. Wow. Dredges, dry washes, power and dredge sluices, winches, rock crushers. There we go. 3-stage rock crusher. Yeah, there we are. Keen gas-powered rock crusher. That's an old style RC46 there. $12,950. The 3-stage, that's got 2 rolls on. I think that's basically the RC46 with double rolls. That's $16,950. So, as you can see, if we'd had to buy that, that would have, haven't tried yet, Paul.
There will be a video when we try dowsing.
Yeah, we will put up a video. That's the only way I'm looking through records of my history of that mine. Yeah. Alex says he spent 6 hours one night trying to find any records of that mine. Guesstimate of an age between 1860 and 1930. Yeah. Kind of a wide area there. I think it's definitely later than 1860 because it has airline in it. So that would mean they were using pneumatic drills. And I think
that iteration might be later than 1860, but we don't know when it started.
Well, we don't know when it started, but as I say, we don't know. But air-powered drills, I think, were late 1800s, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, yeah. We're working on it, Paul. We have faith that we're going the right direction, even though this may not be the right destination. Okay? But yeah, I mean, tens of thousands of dollars cash outlay, not including the tools that are already on hand. So yeah, we spent some money on this project. Luckily, it's the claim owner's money. So it's not a big strain on Eva and myself. We're not stressing out because, again, if it turns out the plug's pulled and we don't have anything else to move on to, I'll just go work for Lauren or Jim or something like that. We can find a job. I can go make $16 an hour down there at the Burger King 3 blocks up the road, and I get Social Security. I can make it work. So we don't have that kind of stress like most people do have. They have so much stuff that requires so much to maintain it. And so they got to make that much money or else things happen. It's exercise, John. It's stress at times, but not generally. I enjoy it. To me, it's like like people go hunting. They spend a lot of effort hunting, but it's a hobby. While it may be get some adrenaline going, it's not the same as what I would call stress. So yeah, it is work. Definitely it's work. And with my geezer body, I know it's work. Don't know about a self-build design, Tricky. I know that Action Mining used to sell an electric roasting furnace for sulfides. Once you got sulfide concentrates, that's what it was designed to roast. But I agree, Alex. Problem solving can be fun if there's no pressure. But basically, Tricky, a tube, refractory lined, that's driven from the outside, just like a trommel drum, and just at a slight angle, you put your cold stuff in the upper end, you run a burner in the lower end, you turn it slowly, and the stuff heats up as it goes down through and then comes out. Yeah, I say we're having a good time learning.
And I have big plans when I get a silver mine.
But anyhow, generally, in most cases, you turn sulfides into oxides, okay, not chlorides. Now, there's some things where you can, like, put salt in the roast, and you can turn it into chlorides. If you had, say, silver, you could, and you had sulfides, you might turn that into silver chlorides, which makes it real easy to get out with a thiosulfate leach. And I say, so it all depends on what you got, what the gang is, what the other minerals are, and what you're trying to do. And so that's, one of the things when you're designing your flow sheet. And yeah, exactly, Tricky. Say, just like a trommel drum has. You got an empty middle and drive on the outside. And then you just put a burner in one end. You can look up on the internet a cement kiln. And what they use to make Portland cement or quicklime industrially, that's what they use. And it's a very, very simple design. And it works just fine. You're going to need a lot of propane or waste oil or something like that to keep the burner running. I believe waste oil is probably going to be cheaper, but slightly more complex to make the burner, but I don't think it's that much more complex. But that would give you a continuous flow device that will continually do it.
So a cast iron fry pan over a campfire won't work, huh?
Pardon? What little one?
A cast iron skillet over a campfire won't work, huh?
Not 1 ton per hour, no. I mean, it's going to take you 10 or 15 minutes to heat up 1 pound of material. You want a lot more than that. I don't know why you would need a steam injector, Tricky. Do you have sulfides or anything like that in your ore? Is this oxidized? What is it that's causing it to be crystal locked? If it's sulfides, I'm unaware of steam doing a better job, but that doesn't mean it isn't. Yeah, plus at one end, Tricky, you can have a scoop, just like on a ball mill, that you just keep the hopper full, basically, and as it comes around, it scoops up a little and dumps it into the kiln and goes around and scoops up another scoop. And like that. Waste oil burner you got? Good. I say just find some large chunk of steel, cylindrical in nature, and you could line it with a castable refractory, or you could do it refractory bricks. You're going to have, well, let's see, if you did refractory bricks and you knew what you were doing, you could make like the equivalent of an arch all the way around. And I think that would be reasonably strong. Okay. Yeah, if you if you take sulfides and roast them in an enriched oxygen environment, you can create a flue gas that has so much sulfur dioxide it's easily converted into sulfuric acid. Aside from that, I'm not aware of any. Yeah, let me show you, Tricky. Let me get a little something here. I'm so used to being able to describe things visually, verbally, that I forget sometimes it's a lot easier visually. Take a steel tube. Generally, long and slender is better, like a piece of pipe, say 12-inch pipe. Okay? And this end, you want a little higher than this end. You take your burner and direct it in this end. On this end here, you can have a little lip. And then you have a little scoop. So you just keep this area here, have something like that, where this is your slip face. And as it comes around, that scoop will grab. And as it comes up, it slides off this way into the thing. Think of something kind of like this, where this is open here, and this is open here. Okay? So as it comes around, it scoops up, and then as it comes over the top, it dumps. This would typically be at an angle here. So as it comes up, it starts sliding that way and gets dumped into the furnace. And then the other thing, this is what they call a counterflow system. This is the cool end. This is the hot end. As your solids start working their way down the tube, and again, this is why it's best to be smaller. So, because the flames are going to tend to be, the hottest area is going to be up here, and the solids are going to tend to be more down here. But as the solids heat up, they get into a hotter and hotter area. And as the flame works its way down, then as it gets cooler, it's trying to heat a cooler material, which it can do. So it's a very nice system, which is why it's been in use for a long, long time. But the key is longer, and then of course you insulate it. It's got an insulating layer in here all the way around to keep that heat in. But you could probably, how many tons per hour are you looking at, Tricky? 100 pounds, 500 pounds, a ton? Don't know, Chris, not familiar with them. That's not unusual, Tricky. Now also remember, this is going to liberate some pretty noxious stuff. If you're doing sulfides, you're going to get sulfur dioxide gas, a lot of it. You're going to want a stack on that. If you got arsenic, you're going to get arsenic coming up that stack. If you got lead, you're going to have lead coming up that stack. Antimony, whatever's in the ore that can be vaporized is going to be vaporized, is going to go up that stack, and you do not want to breathe that stuff. I think Action Mining actually has a scrubber for that. That's right, Alex. A lot of them do. Tricky stuff is rich enough he'd rather do it himself. Yeah, arsenic, mercury, lead, lots of things. Well, 0.01 tons per hour is still tons per hour. So how much are you looking at, Tricky? And again, you never told me, is this sulfides that you can concentrate, or is this the raw ore itself? Okay. Really, John? Wow. Uh, um, the impact mill I got from Action Mining was not terribly impressed. I made some modifications that made it a lot better, I think. 1 ton per day, no arsenic in the mix. Is this in sulfides or is it like crystal locked in quartz? What is locking it up, Tricky? I mean, that's pretty important, because if it's locked in quartz and you're trying to break the quartz up, then you'd want to probably drop it into water. Correct, Goldstream. In many cases, it's a lot easier because the environmental regulations and the not in my backyard issues in the United States mean that it's really hard to have a smelter in the United States. Even though they got a lot of smelters in Germany, and they're a lot closer together with people than we are. But hey, when you're rich, you can be stupid for a while. Absolutely, Goldstream. You're correct, Alex. And again, if the government makes it difficult to do business here, somebody else will do it, and then you're absolutely dependent on them. Ask the Europeans how well that works. They're going to find out real fast. They're shutting them down. Yeah, the problem is the nuke plant really doesn't do much good for most smelters. Aluminum, yes, you can. That's what you use to recover aluminum. Certain steel furnaces, some sort of resin that is impervious to everything except heat. Okay. Do you know how hot you need to get it? That's also an important variable here. If you only needed to get it to like 400 degrees, it's a lot easier than if you got to get it to 1200 degrees. Absolutely, Alex. They're all basically specialized extraction apparatus. Very large, but nevertheless specialized. So let's say you got, and in those cases, they tend to blend, folks. Alex was like, like some smelters are only designed for lead, zinc, silver mixed together, and they will then blend. They will take ore from different mines or different locations of different mines and stuff, and they analyze them and then blend them together to make a very specific feedstock to throw in it. It's kind of like they do with a cement plant or an asphalt paving plant or whatever. They will have sand, they will have gravel, they will have, in the case of cement, they have different grades of gravel. And depending upon how strong they need the concrete, they will put different proportions of different ingredients in it when they mix it. Yeah, haven't heard anything back yet. I did send them an email, haven't heard anything back yet. 950 for 30 minutes. Okay. So you have to get it up to 950 C for 30 minutes. That's pretty hot. Yeah, rotary furnace or potentially fluidized bed. I'm not familiar with fluidized bed. I think they're a little trickier in some ways, but I do not know. Fluidized bed, basically, you have a container and you have air and fuel here. coming up through a porous bottom of some sort. And then you put in your material, and that blows up through it and literally keeps the whole thing fluid. And then you could have an outfall there at this end. But very basic diagram here. That's probably not how they actually do it in reality, but that's the basic concept of fluidized bed. Yeah, O2 source would be quicker, but then you have to have an O2 source. So unless you really need the high temperatures, you might just want to go with atmospheric. And yeah, say batch processes, they're simpler, but they're not usually as productive as a steady state process. That's why all the, big factories generally have steady state processes. It's only when you get into the things like the actual smelter itself, where it takes a charge and creates stuff and then gets tapped. But I think even then they got some fairly good continuous flow stuff now for certain things. But yeah, it can get pretty tricky. But that's why we call you Tricky Dicky. But yeah, you can do batch processes. I imagine there's plenty of wood around there, and it can be got fairly easily. Yeah, you could throw some manganese dioxide or something else in there too. You might try fertilizer, like ammonium nitrate or something. Carefully, of course, in your mix. That's going to be cheap if you can get it. Throw in, I say if you can blend in to your crushed ore some ammonium nitrate and then apply some heat, it might work pretty good. Who knows? And I say that's just a thought. Never done it. Possibly. Don't know, Chris. Don't know all the various ins and outs of these things. But I know there's definitely oxidizing solids. For all you know, something like aluminum oxide, probably not. No, that's pretty refractory. I don't know. Would iron provide the oxygen? I don't know. It depends on how reducing the other stuff is. You might be able to take iron oxide and put it that iron oxide
Rusted cars
might work. You got an oxide zone with a bunch of limonite in it. You might try blending it and then heating it and see what happens. Couldn't hurt on a small scale. And again, this is something that Eva's learning right now due to some other stuff, is always do it on a small scale first. Small scale. That way your bad ideas are pretty cheap bad ideas. We went straight to stage 3, Tricky. I don't know if carbonates are good for providing oxygen. They provide carbon dioxide. Baking soda, don't think so, Alex. Again, you don't want carbonates, you want oxygen. And anything that's carbonate like that will generally make carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide is pretty tight molecule, you know. But I say iron oxide might. Keep it thin. If it solidifies, it could explode. Possibly. Yep. Soda ash? Don't know. Again, it's not nearly as oxidizing as nitrates. Anyhow, Tricky, we got you enough ideas to keep you busy for a week, that's for sure. Hey, AAA, how's it going? Yeah, I'd like the idea of an oxidizer mixed in it if you can get one that's reasonably active, reasonably simply.
Potassium nitrate.
That's probably going to be expensive, but what was it?
Charcoal?
No, that's a reducing agent, not an oxidizing agent.
Yeah, I know.
That's entirely possible, Tricky. We want the silver too if we can get it. So that's we're just going to smelt that down, see what happens. And
if we got the silver, man, I am celebrating.
Yeah, she would be happy with that. I say, when I say small, 50-gram sample, there should be less than a gram of gold in there, about 0.8 grams of gold and 50 grams of resin. So worst case scenario, we threw away 0.8 grams of gold. You know? So that's what you do. You know, if you can't get it to work in a test tube, so to speak, or a beaker, you don't want to be trying something bigger. It should work pretty easily on a small scale before you try scaling up. Calcium nitrate, hey, give it a shot, Tricky. You know, be careful, but mix a little in there, see what happens. Even if it just really reduces the time at temperature that you need, that would be a good thing. If it reduces the temperature you need, that would be a better thing in general. You know? So, depending upon the situation, some are cheaper than others. Some like potassium nitrate. Well, you can make gunpowder and things like that, so they may look at you a little bit askance, you know.
Piggy.
Yeah, you're right, Alex. Could I mine, crush, and leach on a shaker table? You could run leach solution in the slurry on the shaker table, but the size particles you're going to recover from a shaker table are not the size particles that are going to generally leach too well. So if you had an ore that had a lot of both, say it's 50% you could get, which is shaker table, and 50% you had to leach, but it liberated pretty easily, and for whatever reason you're already crushing it to liberation, you might could do that. Just use your leach solution as the liquid for your shaker table. Just be aware that the stuff you're going to be getting, the cons on the shaker table are going to be a lot bigger than what's easily leachable. Okay. And you might have to, for example, regrind those cons before you leach them for a longer kind of period. I guess you do assays with a shaker table. You could do samples with a shaker table and find out what is gravity recoverable. I don't know if you would call that an assay.
Not nasty.
But the um, the basic thing you're going to get from a shaker table is a concentrate and a tailings. And if your gold is in the concentrates and not in the tailings, it's a good thing. If it's in your tailings and not your concentrates, which is what was happening to me, not so good. Yes, there is a size limit, John, I have been told. Once you get to a certain particle size, it won't stick to the mercury. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Mount Baker does a lot of interesting stuff. So I would, um, you know, we're basically somewhere around the level that Mount Baker is in terms of our smelting, but at least Eva and I. Some of the people here are probably a lot better. But we're, you know, we do what we can. We see what happens. And the main thing is test, test, test. Check the other stuff. You know, uh, this is, I say, what we're doing right now with the leaching elution test is it's at the lab. A split is at the lab, getting laboratory testing to determine the gold content. Now, to give you an idea, okay, there's nothing wrong with that, Poker Face. You need to check and see how efficient it is with your ore. That's was our first idea with this ore. Didn't work worth a crap. Okay. So you need to make sure it's going to work. You know, some ores it does. Ryan's ore down south by Tucson, it's got an 80% recovery with gravity separation. Up here, 16% recovery. Yeah. But anyhow, to give you an idea, we had this resin. And the resin should be running, let's see, 1% is 10,000 parts per million?
Yeah.
We're running 1 to 2%, right?
Mm-hmm. Rock found 33,000 parts per million in something we sent him.
Yeah, but that was a more concentrated solution.
Yeah.
Okay. So our resin that we're running right now is running 10 to 20,000 parts per million. If we had higher grade solutions, this can go up over 30,000 parts per million. Okay. Now, on one of our previous elution tests, where we were using, was it equal parts or one to one? Do you recall? What was our ratio on that one? It was more than 1 to 1.
It was
4 to 1? Something like that?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. So we're probably using about 4 parts solution. Oof. To 1 part resin. So in a single batch process, we might recover 1/4 to 1/2 of that before equilibrium happens. So we should be getting somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,000 to 5,000 parts per million in the elution solution. I love the way that rhymes. This would be pretty good recoveries. Okay. I wouldn't expect it to get much more than that because as the level of gold goes up in solution, it's going to get harder and harder to get it out of the resin. That's why you do a continuous flow thing where as it goes into solution, it gets extracted from solution, and the solution runs back barren and does that to an electrowinning cell. Previous test, the best we've got was 146 parts per million. Okay? That's what you call failure. This is what we're looking at here. We need thousands of parts per million if we got a reasonably efficient elution process going on. And so that's where we're at. The question is, what do you mean by smaller flakes, Shaggy? A shaker table should recover down to not 200 mesh without too much trouble. And I've got a gravity process that recovers down to 500 mesh. So the problem is we're going down to 2,000. It's 80% passing 2,000 mesh in our ore. So that's not good enough. Extremely fine gold is very troublesome unless you're leaching, you know. Yeah, Tricky, that is a good point. How big are the sulfides? Can you concentrate the sulfides and then roast just the sulfides? If you can do that, you're going to save a lot of effort. 146 parts per million, 4 ounces per ton. Yeah, about 4.5. You're absolutely correct, Horton. I say that was not good recovery from the resin. The resin itself is in the tens of thousands of parts per million. The leach solution coming out of the ore is in the neighborhood of 5 to 15 parts per million. So we go from 5 to 15 in one step up to tens of thousands. That's a pretty good concentration, especially as it's quite easy to do that part. Getting it into the resin is quite easy, extremely easy. Getting it out of the resin is being a bit more challenging. Let's see.
Oh, good Lord. Biden got lost in the White House garden.
Sweet.
Unfortunately, they found him.
I wouldn't say it's a gold thief, but it does make it difficult to get that final step. I'm pretty confident we will beat it in the long run. Paul, the way you find that out is you run the proper chemical analyses through a qualified lab. And so that's where you just have to check. It gets real pricey to do enough checking. Alex says, Eco Gold X is just bad about letting go of the past, like many X's. Well, Tricky, we'll see what we can all come up with to help you. By the way, do you think is the gold all in the sulfides? And if so, do you think you can concentrate the sulfides? I didn't see an answer to that question, although it might have been while I was looking at the board there. If you can concentrate the sulfides, then you'd probably be in better shape in terms of effort to crush, concentrate, and then roast the concentrates. Another thing too is once you concentrate it, if you put it in an oxidizing environment, some of it will just oxidize sitting there. Yeah, it is tricky. And then what's funny, you see, this is what's kind of amusing to the people who've been in this business. People will look at a mine and they'll go, "Wow, that looks simple." And it is simple. Once they figured out exactly what to do and design the process equipment and chemicals and everything to do exactly the thing, but they're only doing one thing for that ore. And then you I say it looks real simple because they get it down to a fairly simple thing. Because after all, your average mill hand is not a genius. They have to, it has to be fairly straightforward. We tried it, Horton, and it did not do a good job. It did go to a runaway reaction, though. That was pretty hilarious. We had to quickly put the beaker in secondary containment after a little bit. And yeah, that was something I was thinking, because if you can get it into aqua regia, you can get it out of aqua regia by simple precipitation, with sodium metabisulfate or sulfur dioxide, something like that.
Or salt, gold chloride, right?
I don't think gold chloride gets it out of, no, it will not get gold out of aqua regia. It'll get silver out of aqua regia. No, even silver, the chloride should. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Shaggy. What is the burning point? Of sodium just before the silver melts. Both silver and gold can vaporize. Gold chloride vaporizes much easier than gold does. And under certain environments, it will vaporize amazingly easy. Chris.
And silver chloride will vaporize.
Yeah, I already said that. Chris sent me something by the U.S. Bureau of Mines where they did a study. They made an artificial ore out of gold chloride and silica to keep things simple. At 250 degrees centigrade, which is about 400 Fahrenheit, 5% of the gold chloride vaporized, just went into the atmosphere. Okay. But when they added iron pyrite, which isn't that difficult to find in most ores, it went to 95% losses at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Now that's pretty volatile. That's the sort of thing that, wow, crazy. And so that's one of the things you have to look for, but that's why you do all these tests. Oh, come here, little one.
What?
Want to sing it?
Yeah.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Uina. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Uina. You got a good father there.
Happy birthday, 12.
Yeah.
That's a big girl.
So, anyhow, Um, that's what I'm aware of in terms of vaporization. But if you're retorting the mercury, well, theoretically, you're recovering whatever you vaporize too. Um, Horton, that would depend on a number of factors. It's all ore dependent, so you'd have to test. First of all, if you crush your concentrates finely and then do a gravity separation, do you get most of the gold? Sometimes the gold is in discrete, fairly large particles kind of on the outside of the sulfide, in which case you can maybe do a gravity separation and get them. Now, if the gold is inside the sulfides in very small particles, you pretty much have to leach it. But you'd have to grind it very fine to do it because the gold is what they call crystal locked. Tricky says thank you. And so you need to get the sulfides broken to the point where at least one side of the gold particle can be touched by the leaching solution. And you have to use a leaching solution that is compatible with the sulfide mineral, i.e., it doesn't get poisoned or destroyed by it or whatever, you know? And I say, so that's, you have to do some tests. First thing I would try, take your rough concentrates, the ones that you crush to a certain level and to where you can liberate your sulfides, and then do a concentrate. And then I'd also test those tailings. Okay. You may be getting the vast majority of the gold, you may not. Only one way to find out. Okay. And that's to test, because it can go either way. There's no rule that works anywhere close to universally. Then I would crush those concentrates down very fine and try another gravity separation and then a leaching. Okay. And those are kind of the alternatives. Roasting is a form of oxidation. And yes, there's other ways you can oxidize things. They're generally not as fast. Yep. Do you have any specific papers on the different ones, Alex? If you do, I'd love to have a copy of it. Say, because we definitely have some weird stuff here. Yeah, it's bizarre. We are not sure exactly what's going on, but we get very grumpy because it becomes very, very difficult. But yeah, Horton, you just have to test those things. Biooxidizing take months to years, as far as I know. Jeff? Agreed, Chris? Different things do differently, and you put other stuff in there and it can go crazy on you. I say that the iron sulfide, changing it from a 5% loss to a 95% loss at 400 degrees Fahrenheit, that's pretty damn dramatic. Wow. Oh, there was Chris probably has it at his fingertips there. There's things, there are various publications on that. I'd have to look it up. They were postulating it was the iron was forming an iron gold chloride complex, but I do not know. Alex, they basically said they needed more research to figure it out. But yeah. What was the name of that? Let me see if I can find it here without losing everything. Documents, downloads, gold the chemistry of gold extraction by John O. I believe it's Marsden. And it's published by IAIN House. Okay, The Chemistry of Gold Extraction by John O. Marsden. Okay. Did you get that? Okay, good. Yeah, Chris, I agree. Yeah, Horton, that ought to give you a good start. Okay, got it, Alex. Chris might want your help on that too. No, sodium is not a halogen. Chlorine is a halogen. Sodium is an alkali metal. The chlorine gains an electron, and the sodium loses an electron. So they're kind of opposites. But yeah, you have an alkali metal and a halogen. All the halogens, let's see, chlorine, fluorine, bromine, iodine, they all lose one electron, they all gain one electron to satisfy their desire for electrons. Sodium, potassium, cesium, maybe? They're just the opposite. They give up an electron readily to make themselves happy. So that's why the sodium and the chlorine form together. What was the other one? It's not really an alkali metal. Lithium. There you go. Lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium, and Fr, whatever that is. Francium, I believe. Francium. Yep. But I say those elements give up an electron to make themselves comfortable. So, yeah, chlorine or halogens. Yeah, chlorine is halogen, sodium is not. Oh, little one, could you come here a minute?
Yes.
Now, was it last week, I think? But anyhow, last week, Eva was asking me, how do you calculate? We had a precipitate that we were pretty sure was mainly silver. And she was asking me, well, how do you tell how much silver's in it and stuff? So we went over gram molecular weights and things like that. And finally explained it in a way she could understand what gram molecular weights are, what moles are, what molarity is, and things like that. And it really, really made her happy because her chemistry teacher had not done that.
Well, of course not.
But when you're involved with something, you're saying, well, how do I do this? That's when it becomes easier to understand, And she was very, very happy that she finally, it's like, the light bulb went off and she's like, whoa, thank you. I'm finding out I'm learning it a lot easier now than I did in chemistry class too. But anyhow, so that's the situation there. By the way, it's 7:30, little one. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yes. I didn't realize it was already that late.
Well, The goddess is taking a break, you know. If you give me a minute, I will be over there.
Yeah, I agree. And then you get stuff where that one paper that Tricky Dicky is talking about, you've got 2 molar sulfuric acid. You've got 0.75% sodium hypochlorite. You got 5 grams per liter sodium hydroxide. It's like, could you keep the units the same? You know, percentages, grams per liter, something. But you got molarity, you've got percentages, you've got grams per. Oh my gosh! Yeah, it was really really crazy. But yeah, the other thing I couldn't find out is how much sodium hydroxide is there in bleach, because bleach is a fairly common um, source of sodium hypochlorite, but it has sodium hydroxide in it. And so I need to add some sodium hydroxide, but there's some already in it. So I need to know how much was in it. Couldn't find it. And so I did it what do they call that? The empirical way. I took 5 grams per liter sodium hydroxide. So I just mixed some up and then checked the pH. Then I took the bleach, diluted it to the concentration that I needed for the sodium hypochlorite, and then added and kept checking the pH until I knew how much sodium hydroxide to add to that to get what I needed. And I'm sure it does, Alex, but it would be nice to have some idea. And I say, but it's like,
What we should have looked for online for the bleach fair is that safety statement that they have to put out with all products, the NDS8 or whatever it's called.
It'll usually just say it contains it, but yeah. Anyhow, I was talking with Lauren, and he said he's got some sodium hypochlorite. Although, from what Tricky was saying today, maybe calcium hypochlorite is better.
That would be pool shock, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. I said that's easy to get in large quantities. Can you forge sodium into a knife? It's very soft, makes aluminum look like steel. Will it burn up? It will rapidly oxidize. If it gets any water on it, it will
burst into
flame. Well, a significant amount of it will burst into flames.
That would look so freaking cool. Get a knife wet and it bursts into flames in your hand.
Yeah.
I'm in favor of this.
But yeah, sodium, it would not be anything. You can't make a tool out of it. Okay.
Why would you want to when it's not a metal?
Yeah.
Technically.
Yeah, it's very very soft. Yeah, it's much softer than lead. Oh my goodness, I'm terrified. There's something behind me. Ah! Whoa, Alex.
What?
There's a video online of barrels of sodium being thrown in a lake in the 60s for disposal.
Oh, dude, I want to see that.
You got a link, Alex? Got a link?
Send link to email. I want to see.
Well, he can send it here and we could click on
There
it
goes
too.
my idea about a sodium mole, I guess.
Yeah. No, they don't work. You have to coat it with something in there. You might be able to
Howdy,
varnish it.
howdy. Hi, everybody. So, how is everyone's favorite corner of dystopia this week? The goddess's corner of dystopia is looking nice. We had snow. We had snow yesterday, and we had a power outage for a few hours in the middle of the night, but it came back, Well, Chris, if you store it under mineral oil, you can't handle it. Hi, Kodak. Thank you, Alex. I will look that up. The disposal of sodium, 1947, Washington State. Cool. Yeah, we had snow in our corner of dystopia the other day. It was so pretty. And a very short power outage, and the power came back, and it was the middle of the night, so it didn't matter anyway. Let's see if there's any mining news this week. Newcrest suspends operations at Brucejack Mine following a critical incident.
That's not good.
Critical incident does not sound good now.
No.
Australian gold miner Newcrest Mining said on Monday it was investigating a critical incident involving a team member from its Brucejack mine in British Columbia, Canada. Speaking of which, Canadian gold mine is going into care and maintenance very shortly. Saw an article earlier. The individual belongs to its mining and development contractor for the project, Procon. Newcrest said it was working closely with Procon and the relevant authorities. The company has suspended all mining and processing operations at the mine site. Newcrest acquired Brucejack, which produces gold and silver, as part of its acquisition of Presium Resources Incorporated this year. Brucejack began commercial production in July 2017 and is one of the highest grade operating gold mines in the world. The project spans 1,200 square kilometers in the heart of British Columbia's Golden Triangle, which has a 100-year mining history and also hosts the Red Chris, Eskay Creek, and Snip mines. As of January 1st, 2021, Brucejack's Valley of the Kings deposit held a compliant, proven, and probable reserve base of 11.5 million tons, grading 8.7 grams per ton of gold and 9.8 grams per ton silver, for 3.2 million ounces and 3.6 million ounces of gold and silver metal, respectively. A critical incident with no details. The goddess believes that this may require a moment of silence, because that really kind of is very disturbing. Responsible copper mining framework extended to nickel, zinc, and molybdenum. Responsible copper mining framework. The Copper Mark announced Monday it is extending its responsible mining assessment, already covering a fifth of global copper production, to molybdenum, nickel, and zinc with the launch of a pilot program. The pilot, which runs through July 2023, is the result of a collaboration between the Copper Mark, the International Molybdenum Association, the Nickel Institute, and the International Zinc Association to promote sustainable and responsible production and sourcing practices. A full launch is planned for next year, and the four organizations are not establishing any new standards. Participation in the pilot is voluntary and is open to any site involved in the extraction, processing, treatment, mixing, recycling, handling, or otherwise manipulating of products containing molybdenum, nickel, or zinc, mined ore, metals, chemicals, alloys, or other materials, according to the Copper Mark. The copper industry created Copper Mark in March 2020, which is a voluntary assurance framework to promote responsible and sustainable production practices, including environment management, social issues, labor practices, and governance. The total number of participating sites stood at 42 at the end of August. The answer to the question. According to Copper Mark, of those, 30 sites in Europe, South and North America, Australia, Korea, and Japan have been audited and awarded the Copper Mark, representing roughly 20% of global mined copper production. Michel Bruart, executive director of the Copper Mark, says Codelco, the world's largest copper producer, has signed up to the Copper Mark assurance process. The Chilean state-owned company's first mine under consideration is El Teniente, with others likely joining in 2023. That would bring the percentage of production covered to some 25%. Mines have 2 years to complete the process and transform practices within the Copper Mark framework ahead of auditing. An independent third-party assessment is carried out every 3 years. Brunhart tells mining.com that realistically, the copper mark would eventually cover 50 to 60% of global production. While the body is engaged with governments and producers in places like China, there is little pressure on the domestic industry in the country to follow international standards, as is the case in other sectors of the Chinese economy. Oh, gee. Color me surprised. Brulhart says Coppermark has also published a chain of custody standard in order to capture and monitor the full value chain, including scrap processors, and provide end users, such as electric car and renewable energy equipment manufacturers, a certified, responsibly mined product. Oh, be still my beating heart. I wonder how many zeros that's going to add to the price tag, whether they're needed or not. The organization is also in the midst of revising the standards, which it has committed to doing every 3 years. While there is no protocol for enforcement of standards as such, loss of certification would carry reputational risks, particularly since participants are publicly listed. Oh, that sounds a whole hell of a lot like a social credit score in the making. Brudelhart says smelters and refiners that have been audited are not included in this figure to eliminate the possibility of double counting as metal passes through the supply chain. To receive certification, each mine must meet 32 sustainability criteria relating to issues such as greenhouse gas emissions, health and safety, tailings management, biodiversity, business integrity, responsible sourcing, gender equality, and human rights. Okay. Bruhart says, unlike the gold industry, informal and artisanal small-scale mining is minimal within copper mining. Well, that's true. The high-volume, low-grade nature of copper mining makes it most unviable, especially in places like the Congo, where copper is extracted alongside cobalt. It would represent less than 1% of global copper production. A report by Wood Mackenzie released last week estimates that 9.7 million tons of new copper supply is needed over 10 years to meet the targets set out in the Paris Climate Agreement. Copper was last trading at $3.43 a pound, $7,560 a ton, down more than 20% in price so far this year. How interesting. How very, very interesting, especially since the target reports and quarterly reports for major copper mines that have been coming out in the last couple of weeks are looking a little sketchy for this year. And more than one industry source is saying that there's going to be a significant shortage of physical copper available for ordinary uses. Never mind this whole green thing that they're, well, never mind that thing. That thing is just not relevant in the real world anyway, as we all know. For those who follow the COMEX, there is now a COMEX calculator online. It takes the contracts, it takes the amount that COMEX actually claims they have and registered, and it does the math based on all kinds of various types of wizardry and, expected outflows, expected deliveries, etc. And according to that lovely little calculator, the COMEX registered, unless something drastic happens, is going to hit zero in 154 days. That's down from 211 days last week. So yeah, things are looking interesting. Things are looking even more interesting when you hear and see for yourself in various news reports here, there, and elsewhere that it turns out, how COMEX has 2 departments. They have registered, that's the stuff that's supposed to be going out the door that nobody ever actually manages to take delivery on. And they have eligible, which is the stuff that's sitting around that they can move into registered so it can go out the door or pretend to go out the door so people can try to take delivery. Well, apparently they're eligible as kind of fractionalized too, because according to more than a few little reports out there, what all had assumed was a typo in the eligible number in gold and silver may not be a typo. So, in addition to all the paper, gold, and silver floating around out there that COMEX does not have a hope of actually being able to deliver, it turns out that less than 50% of eligible in gold and silver may actually be in the vaults. Which leads the goddess to the issue of vaults. The federal government apparently has a vault, or it used to, a repository, called Fort Knox that nobody has seen the inside of for 50 years now. Nixon didn't even see the inside before it was sealed, and he said, "Oh, we're off the gold standard temporarily." Well, 50 some odd years later, 51 years later, that's quite temporary. I suppose it is on a geologic time scale, But now we hear that LME is doing everything they can to avoid having their vaults physically audited by independent third parties. And COMEX's paperwork indicates that their vaults, which are never ever seen by independent third parties, may also be a little short on the metals that they claim to have physical possession of. Could this be why they were actually trying to entice people to store their gold and their silver in the COMEX vaults? They were offering to pay you to store your metals in their vaults. Yeah. The goddess hopes most fervently that nobody in this group, at least, is stupid enough to house their physical metals in somebody else's vault that isn't like right next door, and the somebody else isn't like their dad, and stuff like that. I certainly would not be storing my metals in the COMEX vault or the LME. And I am sure you all know that as far as the goddess is concerned, this is about how much gold is probably sitting in Fort Knox these days. Maybe this much in pounds. Okay. Maybe troy pounds here. Probably more like this total. It ain't there. Because you can bet if it was there, those yo-yos would not still be calling it $32 an ounce on the Treasury's books. And those yo-yos would be parading around telling the whole world how much they had. Some interesting things have happened this week in the ongoing, slowly building momentum towards sound money. So the BRICS is working on a currency that is backed by a basket of commodities, including a wide variety of precious metals. India and a few of the other BRICS nations have said that they definitely want silver and gold on that list. India currently is celebrating Diwali. Happy Diwali, everybody. This is a holiday wherein you buy gold and silver and you light a lot of candles. It's a festival of lights of sorts, and it's really, really cool. And they are seeing record sales in both silver and gold this year, despite the double-digit inflation and the recession and the, food problems that everybody is having. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia is now talking to the BRICS about joining the BRICS. And Egypt said over the past couple of days, they started making interesting noises since they're not an oil exporter or anything. There's There's no real pressing reason that their internal economy should be running on US dollars. So, we're just going to start migrating our internal economy to metals. Zimbabwe, meanwhile, did a limited run release of 1 ounce gold coins last month to raving astonishing success beyond their wildest dreams. So they are enlarging that program. They're going to be releasing fractional gold. They're also going to start releasing, there are rumors, silver and fractional silver in an effort to bolster up and bring their absolutely beyond less than worthless dollar to actual money type status. And then the goddess almost fell off her chair. When I was looking at the news and I was perusing the news, I see several prominent Mexican politicians and very popular candidates for office as well in Mexico that are pushing for legislation to make the libertad legal tender again. Now, anybody who collects silver, anybody who buys silver knows that libertads are an extraordinarily popular coin. They are beautiful, first of all. They are really, really pretty. Second, they are very, very good quality. But one has to consider the larger implications if Mexico actually manages to make their libertads legal tender again. That opens the door wide for them to move a huge share of their economy onto a sound money standard because Mexico, having hit the geological lottery of all time, is up to here with native silver. And at the moment, about half that native silver isn't controlled by the cartels yet. The other half, well, we ain't going to go there. Nobody goes there, okay? People who go there lose their heads. That's just one of those things. But the thing is, we now have Mexico looking at legitimizing and bringing back into their currency mix a precious metal coin or a series of precious metal coins and fractionals as legal tender. If Mexico goes that route, it would not surprise me at all to see everybody south of them sit up, take notice, look around at the mines that they have been nationalizing, hello, Chile and elsewhere, but take a look around at their mining situation and say, hey, wait a minute. There's a worldwide recession going on here that's turning into a worldwide depression. And even at the ridiculously suppressed and ridiculously low prices of gold and silver, if they decide to turn to real money, that's going to do wonders for their balance sheets. Brazil is already on that list because Brazil is a BRICS country. Quite a few African nations have also asked about joining BRICS. Turkey has asked about joining BRICS. Saudi Arabia wants to join BRICS. All of a sudden, all these people that have been dealing with the petrodollar for a zillion years since Bretton Woods are really eyeballing BRICS as an attractive proposition. This is a positive thing. Well, for everybody except the United States, but considering the level of our debt, which, in case you missed the news, has now surpassed $32 trillion. It went from 31 trillion to 32 trillion in about a month and a half. That train is only going to get faster because that train ain't got no brakes. I can tell you that right now. We've all seen what's going on in Washington these days.
To the moon.
Yeah. Yeah, the dollar's going to go to the moon, all right. It'll take 20 trillion of them to buy a loaf of bread at this rate. But we are seeing more interest in sound money, which means if these nations can pull this off, the economic upheaval is going to be something that has never been seen before in the world. The last time the world went through a worldwide depression, the gold standard, though it was beginning to be fractionalized, was the norm. Sound money was the norm, and it still hurt, and a whole lot of people were in really bad shape. This time, we are going into a depressionary cycle. As a matter of fact, one of those financial analysts on one of the yo-yo talking head multimedia, those mainstream folks, was saying that it could be up to 10 years before we recover. Mm-hmm. Even though we're not in a recession yet, according to Lord Malarkey and company, it's going to be 10 years before we recover. But our economy is in fantastic shape. Yeah, well, in 10 years, our economy will be even better. Fantastic. Well, none of that makes any sense, okay? Expecting sense from the mainstream media or our politicians is not. It's an exercise in futility. You would probably have more luck trying to teach calculus to a pig. You really would at this point. But the thing is, if ever there was a perfect time to hit an actual financial reset button and move to a sound money standard, the goddess would think that the middle of a depression would actually be the perfect time. It would be the perfect time because everybody's money, everybody's fiat is equally screwed. Everybody is equally screwed. Everybody is on an equal playing field. So if ever you wanted a time when it was a good idea to say, okay, we're wiping all the balance sheets, all the digital zeros are disappearing, we're starting over again with whatever gold and silver we have in our vaults, that would be the time. The problem then, of course, is the United States is screwed because there ain't nothing in our vaults.
This chair has a loose screw down there.
Yeah.
Do not lean backwards, or you may keep leaning backwards permanently. Okay?
Well, it's not my fault that you haven't fixed the chair.
True. Just wanted to make sure that you weren't
Absolutely
even more
ridiculous. In other wonderful news, though, our United States Mint, the people who are currently selling American Silver Eagles at about 120% premium, is actually starting production on American Silver Eagles again. They're apparently going to put out 850,000 of them for a little over twice spot. Rather fascinating, huh? You don't want to see what they're charging for their gold. It's just as bad. And don't look at what they're charging for their proof sets. Because I'll tell you right now, you think 120% premium is bad? You don't want to see the premium on a proof set these days. Thieves. Absolute thieves. Operating entirely illegally, but what else is new? That's just the Mint for you. In other random news, we should all congratulate Senator Ted Cruz because the Babylon Bee has been running an amazing set of short comedy commercials, what you could call a little tiny mini TV show based on a California couple that moves to Texas. And Senator Ted Cruz made a very cute cameo appearance in the recent video. It was funny. Yeah, the screw loose in the background. Yeah. It was a funny, good video. Okay, that whole series of videos is actually very funny. So we need to congratulate Ted Cruz because while he is engaging in conduct that is rather cringy for a senator, and he is a slimy, double-talking, used car salesman who is a totally fake brand, okay, the goddess did not approve of his presidential run. by the way. He's really good in those videos. Yep. We can congratulate him. We can also congratulate Kamala Harris, who has taken word salad to a new high art form. If word salad were a cuisine, she would be the ultimate chef. You might want to look up what she's been saying. We can congratulate Nancy Pelosi, who apparently decided to do a few interviews mildly drunk this week, because in one interview she said whenever the subject of inflation comes up, we need to change the subject, while she was wearing a $5,000 blazer. Rather interesting. And then, anyway, she made a few other comments that reflected very badly on her, even if she was drunk or suffering dementia or both. And for once, the climate activist eco-terrorists and other weirdos did something I approved of. While Senator Cruz was on The View, having to tolerate being in the presence of Whoopi and Joy and the rest of The View, I don't know how the hell he managed that without vomiting on his own shoes. While Senator Cruz was on The View, making mincemeat of the I can't use the L word, so the persons who may well be female that do the View show. Okay, we'll put it that way. While he was making mincemeat of them, the interview was interrupted by a bunch of protesting climate activists. Of course, Whoopi immediately blamed this on the GOP. The goddess is confused, but, Whoopi is confused too. So at least, for once, the goddess and Whoopi are actually kind of sort of in the same ballpark, but thankfully as far apart as two people can possibly get. Meanwhile, the eco-terrorists known as No Oil or, Oil Gone or Oil No or whatever the hell they're calling themselves. Well, let's see. So far, they've thrown tomato soup on several irreplaceable works of art. They threw mashed potatoes on a Monet for some reason. And the goddess does not understand how this is the case, but even when they are super glued to the wall, none of the art patrons who see them inflict this terroristic damage have kicked them in the balls yet. Yeah, Kodak. A lot of us have noticed that fiat is losing value in gold at the same time. The current theory in tinfoil hat land on this is that because we are entering a recession and we're beginning to see demand collapse in the economy, we're going to see far more suppression of metals prices because manufacturers are going to have to preserve their profit lines. And if they're selling less shit, then they have to sell more cheaper shit, etc. The goddess is not entirely convinced as to the validity of this particular tinfoil hat theory, since it came out of a part of tinfoil hat land where, let's just say, they're a little bit weird. Okay. Both numbers are entirely manipulated. They're absolutely fake. If anybody actually believes that the dollar standard and the foreign exchange thing between dollar and any of these other fiat currencies is real, then you have a problem to begin with. They're fake numbers to begin with. The gold number's fake, the silver number's fake, the paper numbers are all fake. It behooves the powers that be, if you will, to have people believing that gold and silver are not good hedges against inflation, because that's how they were sold after they were taken away as money. They were sold as, well, it's a hedge against inflation. It's actually a storage of wealth, which is an entirely different concept, but in fiat land, they were using hedge against inflation. By keeping the prices of gold and silver artificially suppressed in relation to the way the dollar looks like it is staying healthier and putting out negative articles about precious metals, that keeps investors from moving their money out of the stock market and into physical metals. This is a very important thing because the stock market is this close to exploding. This is a bubble like we haven't seen since before 1929. This bubble, if it gets bad enough, could make 1929 look minor in the stock market. It's a bloodbath because the stocks have completely separated from reality. They've been separated from reality now for decades instead of just years. So let's say gold tomorrow started climbing and it hit 2000, and then next week it hit 2100, and then it started hitting 2200. Meanwhile, people are seeing those red numbers on the Dow Jones and the S&P 500 every day on CNN when CNN says, well, the market rallied to earn back 300 points, so that you forget that it still closed down 200 or 300 points. People will move their money because they'll say, hey, gold is on a rally. If I move my money and gold keeps going up $100 a week the way it has been, I'll earn back what I just lost in the stock market, that casino down the road. So if they can keep these prices suppressed, if they can keep it hard to get your hands on, then you're more likely to leave your money in the stock market because these same people are telling you, well, yeah, the market lost 600 points in the morning, but it came back 350. Still down 250, but they stopped mentioning that number, so you will forget that number. They always end every broadcast talking about how the stocks rallied and made a strong comeback so that you think it's a good idea to keep your money in the market because they need your money in the market. They need it there. If it is not there, there is a real serious problem. If metals start going up when the dollar is going up, then and the stock market is going down, and we all know that 401ks have already lost like 25% of their value or 30% since Biden got in office, not including inflation. If people see metals going up and metals are available, then people will want to take their money out of a thing they see going down and put it in a thing they see going up. And then it will not be possible for the feds to inject enough money in the market to keep it from finally dying, from finally exploding. And it is going to explode. It's only a matter of time before this market just
collapses.
Yeah, goes poof, poof, just absolute poof. It's only a matter of time. We also have going on in the background, the Treasury is still madly buying up some things called reverse repo. They have to do with toxic mortgages or something. They're buying them up by the hundreds of billions behind the scenes every single night, while the mortgage market itself is falling. And there's an interesting data point there, because a whole lot of people I know that have mortgages and have good rates on those mortgages are now getting phone calls and letters from their mortgage holder saying, hey, you've got equity, let us refinance you now so you've got money to do something fun with. If you've got a mortgage at 2%, are you going to be stupid enough to take out an equity line at 5%? why are mortgage companies suddenly contacting people at all hours of the day or night trying to get them to refi their mortgages, or offering to let them take out an additional small mortgage to make improvements since property values are falling in their area? So if they do a new kitchen for $50,000, their house will be at the top of the market in their area. The goddess actually got a piece of junk mail the other day. I don't think he noticed it, but we got two pieces of junk mail. They were credit card applications, pre-approved. Credit cards especially designed for older folks on a fixed income. Now I ask you, how desperate do you have to be to get your hands on money if you're willing to give a low interest rate credit card to people on a fixed income with no verifications required? That tells you how desperate these people are for money. Another note as to how desperate these people are for money. Our dear friends at PayPal are still sending emails to all the people who cancel saying, well, in case you've changed your mind about canceling, we'll give you up to $15 free to come on back. Some people are getting offered $8, some are getting offered $15. A few people with big business accounts were offered $25 free and for nothing to come back. Somebody actually decided to look at the terms of this, and you had to keep your PayPal account open for a minimum of 6 months. And you had to link your active bank account to that PayPal account for the entire time. Yeah. And Ally Bank has been randomly freezing people's accounts for suspicious activity. I've had several people that have provided proof that their Ally Bank account had been temporarily frozen for suspicious activity. And their withdrawals from these accounts were severely limited before that. They started withdrawing the maximum because they were told their withdrawal limit had changed on Ally's debit card system, their network of ATMs that they're joined to. So people started taking out the max because that worried them. And then all of a sudden, their accounts got frozen for suspicious activity. And now they could be waiting up to 90 days while Ally evaluates whether they want to continue this business partnership. I have seen similar reports from people with Wells Fargo and people with Chase. And we're not talking high-level conservative podcasters here. We're not talking the usual suspects that everybody considers to be domestic terrorists or whatever. We're talking ordinary people like us. Money is getting very tight. Liquidity in the system is getting very tight. And the fiat system is a Ponzi scheme. In order for a Ponzi to work, money must keep moving. Ponzi's only work so long as there is a constant flow through them. If there is no flow, they crash. That is why planned obsolescence is necessary in our fiat economy. Without planned obsolescence, it crashes. Oh, and the Treasury is loaning more money to Credit Suisse, and Credit Suisse is starting to try to sell off some assets because they just settled for paying a several €100 million fine over in France to make sure they don't get audited there. So we're going to have to keep an eye on them because they're getting even sketchier than they were before. And they were sketchy before. By the way, several of their higher-ups used to work for Lehman Brothers. You may remember them before 2008. A couple of them were working for Lehman Brothers in 2008. So, in the incestuous world of banking, this is not uncommon. But yeah, there's every reason for these people to be highly motivated to keep the metals looking unattractive. They need the metals to look unattractive because if they went back on a sound money system tomorrow, they couldn't get away with any of the shit they're doing now. Okay? Sound money has rules, fiat does not. If they went on a sound money system tomorrow, then the world would actually want to know how much money all these various governments actually have in their vaults versus what they claim they have in their vaults. And that could lead to some seriously embarrassing conversations when a lot of these countries apparently vault their gold for some bizarre and unaccountable reason in the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve won't let them see it either. And they need to keep the stock market afloat. That won't happen if people pull their money out of stocks to buy gold and silver. But down on street level, what is happening now is there are more and more people that are posting videos and pictures and verifications of local coin shops hither and thither in small cities and in large towns and in big cities that are showing extraordinarily low stock compared to normal, that are showing far higher premiums than normal, whose owners are saying they can't get stuff delivered the same way our owners have constant delivery delays because there is a bottleneck right now between what is coming out of the ground and what is being made into a product that you and me can buy and take home. That is showing up on the websites too. JM Bullion, Scottsdale, First Majestic, everybody is low stock or sold out, or you can pre-order for delivery in a month and a half. The physical is beginning to disappear. This is why you need to take the little fiat, the pretty pieces of paper that look kind of cool and have dead people on them that we really should have listened to, and if we continue to listen to, would not have been in this deep shit mess right now. You need to take those pieces of paper. You need to wander down to your local coin shop. You need to wander out with whatever gold and silver they have on hand. Back up the truck. Oh, and then you get a little boat and you take your little fiat. You take your silver and your gold and you go fishing. Of course, you're going to have an unfortunate boating accident.
You could have a boating accident.
Yeah, you're going to have an unfortunate boating accident. But, that just happens. Because the thing is, this is only going to get worse. They're pretty much backed into a corner at this point here. And it's only going to get worse. But
oh, by the way, before I forget, Prospector Trip has a brand new 20 horsepower, 3-phase electric motor that he's willing to part with for like $800, a Baldor. So if anyone's interested in it, talk to Prospector Trip. Shaggy says, have a good one. I am a good one. Thank you, Shaggy.
The goddess will not comment.
Then who's the good
He's
one?
He's a legend in his own mind.
It could be used for almost anything, but yeah, it's a pretty stout little motor. Yeah, you need something besides a person to lift it. Anyhow.
Could it run a windmill?
Could it run a windmill?
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to run a windmill. You'd want it to run off of a windmill. I don't know if it could act as a generator. Depends on the type of motor, I believe. But anyhow. So that's basically where we are right now. The overall situation doesn't look to me like it's getting any better. The elections are now 2 weeks away. and that could get kind of interesting. I would advise that everyone have their plans pretty much in place by election day, because it's going to be hard to tell which way it's going to go from there. Well, Alex, I think you're wrong, because if you look, the wind will be blowing this way and the windmills are turning that way. And so, like, if you look at the angle of the blade, you can tell it's actually being turned by the wind. Yeah, I'll bet, Alex. I have a friend in Southern California, Imperial County, and he said he took his names off the voter rolls. He said, "Don't you want to vote?" He says, "Yeah, the problem is I keep voting before I get to the ballot, and I'm always probably voting for Democrats. But every time I show up to vote, they say I've already voted and I can't vote. So screw it.
Which happened to you, which happened to me.
Yeah, I take my name off the voter rolls. They can't send out a ballot in my name, at least." Tricky, grind the rock to where you make your concentrate, or if you're going to run straight ore, and then roast it. If you make a concentrate, you can probably go with a coarser grind for a sulfide concentrate, and then grind it finer to actually roast it. Okay. That sounds about right. No sulfides. The finer you grind it, the faster it'll get to the temperature you need, and the easier it is for the oxygen to get to whatever it is you're trying to roast off. Okay. So if you're going to go run of mine material, and you're trying to roast off the coatings, the finer you grind it, the easier that'll be. But there's a certain point of diminishing returns. You'll just have to figure that out yourself by testing. Alex, he says there's some kind of like organic coating on the gold or whatever that only seems to go bye-bye if you heat it hard enough. And it was like 950 C for 15 or 20 minutes, as I recall, something like that. So that's why we were also discussing various oxidizing agents, See, resin coating probably has to do with all the plants that grow around there. If you lived in a desert, that wouldn't happen near so much, Tricky. Of course, the bananas probably wouldn't grow too well either. Oh.
I'm trying to picture bananas growing in Arizona. This is looking really ugly.
You need a lot of water.
Probably have to put them in a greenhouse to make it human.
Probably, Alex, but then you'd have to make sure you got the solvent off. Okay, Chris. Because otherwise you just leave a coating on there. On the other hand, if you were able to remove it by a hot solvent and then, heat it, then if the coating's thinner and has a solvent in it, yeah. Oh, okay, Tricky. Sorry. But here's another idea, Tricky. How about hot lye? Many organics, when you're exposed to hot lye, turn into soap. So that might work. Again, try it in small quantities first.
If it gets foamy and bubbly, then you got soap.
Yeah.
Good byproduct.
But I say, if you have a hot, strong lye solution, or heat it up, basically in this case, you could be at boiling temperatures, and that might work. So you might try that on a small scale. Just boiling lye. Alex, remember, you said you wouldn't tell anybody. Okay. Yeah, and that's it. The soaps are then water soluble. Yeah, give it a shot, Tricky. Again, on small quantities, it can't hurt to try, and go from there. But yeah,
if you end up with a soap, you may have a sellable byproduct.
Yeah, nah, not really.
Industrial use?
Yeah, too much crap. Yeah, if you, I say the lye should work at boiling water temperatures, which would be a lot easier to achieve than um, uh, getting it to 950 degrees. Yep. Kodak, admit nothing, deny everything, demand proof. Or, as Robert Barnes likes to say, always in cash, never in writing. Oh, yeah, Alex. Lye can be pretty nasty stuff. The other thing I hate about lye is it damages you before you really feel it. Most acids or whatever, if they're trying to eat at you, you'll feel it before you really get a big hole. Hydrofluoric being an exception to that. And no gold, no cash. Yeah, only gold. There you go.
Yeah.
Grit in the lye. Isn't that lava soap? I don't know about the lye part, but yeah, the grit. That's lava. That's right. Yeah, I've heard that. I've never tried it.
Lye is used in most soaps, cleaning soaps anyway.
Smell triggers me. I put silver. I don't think you mean meteorologist, Bulker. I think you mean metallurgist. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, I've never used lye for etching glass or quartz before, but I hear it will. It makes sodium silicate, I believe. But
That's probably what happened to my glass beakers.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, let's say it's something easy to try and see what happens. But yeah, I'd give it a shot. What the heck? What could possibly go wrong? Yes, wear proper protective equipment, especially hot lye. That can really do some damage in a hurry. So make sure you're wearing proper protective equipment. And I'd wear a face shield instead of just glasses too. Well, lying is cheap for the liar, but not for the people being lied about. You know. So yeah, that might be an interesting test. See what happens there. Anyhow, say that claim that we staked up on top of that mountain is near some patented claims too. As a matter of fact, it overlaps one of them. So it's entirely possible that we may be spending quite a lot of time up there some week this summer to really look at things. With all those trees in the way, you really have to do a detailed search pattern because your satellite won't show up. That discovery that we made, you can see it's a pretty substantial thing. If you don't know exactly where to look and what you're looking for, you can't even see it on the satellite. So, yeah. Well, once you've dissolved the resin, then there's lots of things that use alkaline solutions to dissolve gold. Cyanide, Eco Gold X. What do you got here? Let's see. It's the thiourea, not thiourea, thiosulfate. That's also alkaline, isn't it? Yeah, I don't have any tellurides, Alex. Can't help you there. I agree. It would be cool. Yeah, but once you've liberated it, then just kind of rinse off the lye to save it, or just dewater it basically, and then add a leaching solution. And it should work fine. At 2000 mesh, your Jin Chan should work fine. So that would be my thought. But say your thio leach might work fine. You can probably say if you just dewater it thoroughly and then add a leaching solution at the lower pH, it should help out. Is your ore naturally neutral, acid, or alkaline? Because if it had like limestone, it'd tend to buffer at a lower pH, But I would, Shaggy, if you're talking about the claim I looked at this week, yeah, it's pretty close. It's as far as we can tell from Eva's smartphone, it's 44 road miles to get to. The scenery is awesome. I bet you it's pretty cold right now and pretty snowy. I agree that the pH would have to be brought down, Tricky. I say you might be able to do that simply by good dewatering and dilution, especially if there's even a slight acidity to the natural ore. Yeah, you could. Exactly, Shaggy. Again, you're just going to have to do a testing on that one, Tricky. But I don't think you have to go to pH 14. How much lye did your grandmother used to use for making soap, little one?
Oh, very little. I mean, let me see. If we made the equivalent of a 5-gallon bucket of soft soap, there'd be like a half a cup.
Okay, Eva says that her grandmother used about a half a cup of lye to make about 5 gallons of soft soap. So let's see.
And that was the cleaning soap. That was stronger than the human person soap.
Lye to make soap. Sodium, 100% bulk lye. How to make lye soap the old-fashioned way. Wear goggles and gloves. Boil the white ashes from hardwood fires. Let the ashes settle down. Liquid lye will float to the top. Yep. Yeah, that's basically how they did it. They had an ash barrel.
Yeah, we had an ash barrel. And you filtered it, and you put the solution back through it 2 or 3 times until you could float an egg.
Well, that's pretty useless.
What?
How to make your own homemade soap recipe. Palm-free cold processed soap recipe. Coconut oil, 44%. Olive oil, 35%. Castor oil, 4%. Rice bran oil, 10%. Avocado oil, 7%. Sounds like a lubricant to me, not a soap. You're missing a few other things.
Yeah, where's the sulfonic?
Okay, how to make homemade soap in 6 easy tips. Melt and mix the oils. Mix the water and lye. How much? I hate these easy things, because it's like, Gather your tools. Pre-mixed. Oh, purchase a soap base, a pre-mixed combination of soap and glue. Okay. Anyone know how much soap you need to be? I mean, lye you need to make soap. That's true, Alex. But again, that's where you test it. Got that tricky? Test, test, test. Go ahead and make a number of lye concentrations and see what works. I mean, first thing I would do is I would make a pretty strong one, like a pH 14, and try it, see if it works. And if it does, then I'd make weaker and weaker solutions until it stopped working. Then I'd notch it up one, and that would be the minimum amount. Because you don't want to use any more than you have to for a variety of very good reasons. I mean, there's just no good reason I can think of to use more lye than necessary to do the job. But it's like when I was testing the Eco Gold X, that they said pH 11 to 11.5. Yeah, I found out 10 to 10.5 worked significantly better. So, say everything else being equal, less chemicals is better, especially when you're using lime. Lime is hard to get up, 11, 11.5. You're really pushing it with lime. But 10, 10.5, that's easy with lime. You like the roasting method? Maybe. Wait till you see what it takes to make a roaster. It may turn out to be a lot more complicated than a large pot.
You watch. Tricky will start building a roaster. Everything will come together perfectly. It will be done in 10 minutes and it will work beautifully.
Want to bet?
You have more bad luck than anybody. Okay?
Oh, the harshness I hear coming from yonder. Yeah, I say roasters need a lot of fuel. I mean, it takes a lot of heat to heat up rock, So that's why I suggest, give it a shot. See what happens. It's cheap and easy. Do not use aluminum cookware. Lye and aluminum, not good. Creates hydrogen gas rapidly. It's a pretty radical reaction. Yeah, it was raining or snowing for 3 days straight here. You are wet classifying. Is there cloth you could put over the top of the bucket and invert over another bucket to save the water but lighten the pay gravel to carry home? I would say a screen would be more likely, like about a 50 mesh screen or something like that. But I mean, you should be able to decant the stuff pretty easily without, most of the gold is going to be buried in the classified material. I just swirl it around a little bit to get the gold from right on the surface, and then just gently tip it over there. And I imagine it can, Alex. Yeah. These waste oil heaters seem to be pretty efficient things. Lauren actually went and took a number of IBCs over to North Dakota and filled them with raw petroleum, because you could get it really cheap. I have no idea, Paul. Little one, he says he would rather smelt in lye and borax than anything, but I have heard that sodium burns up platinum specifically and silver is vulnerable. How about gold?
It depends on your gold complex. I suspect our gold complex is more volatile than we normally get. I will tell you, you will definitely see silver losses if you use lye and borax. Why you'd want to use lye and borax, I don't know.
I don't know either. For fine screening material, just look on um, Amazon. I got, let's see, we got 20 mesh and 30 mesh because that's what I needed. And they were like $15 for, I think it was 2 feet by 1 foot, something like that. And so it's not hard to find, and it's not difficult to order. For a um, for a bucket, you could take a regular bucket lid and drill a bunch of large diameter holes in it so it'll kind of clamp on, and just screw a piece of screen to it. And then when your bucket is full, you just clamp the lid on it, lay it on its side. Yep. And that should drain it pretty effectively. Carbon's a pretty strong reducing agent compared to iron. Paul says the lye thins it out, but can burn according to Mount Baker. I think it burns at about 1950 Fahrenheit.
Yeah. The soda ash actually thins it out better. You want to have your flux so that you've got 3 parts borax to 4 parts silica, and your soda ash should be about 2 times the amount of your charge. So if you have, say, 10 grams of ore in there, you want 20 grams of soda ash. If you do that,
3 parts of which to what?
3 parts borax,
Borax.
4 parts silica,
Parts silica.
and then 1.5 to 2 times the weight of your charge. So if you've got a 10 gram, if you've got 10 grams of ore or something in there that you're smelting, you want to have about 20 grams of soda ash. If you do that, what you're going to do is after you get through your fusion stage and your...
Hold on. 3 parts borax, 4 parts silica, and 1 times the weight. That doesn't tell you anything about the charge. Is this parts, is that times charge?
Yeah.
Times what? Okay.
2 times the weight of the charge.
No. 3 parts borax. Parts of what?
It does by weight, whatever you want to do by weight. I mean, like sometimes I'm using 9 grams of borax and 12 grams of
I understand. Silica. But that means you could have 30 pounds of borax, 40 pounds of silica, and 30 grams of soda ash for a 30-gram charge. These have to be absolute.
Your borax and silica ratio, your borax and silica should be kept in ratio, and they should be 2 to 3 times your charge in weight.
And together.
Yeah. So like, for instance, my charge is a 12.5 gram charge. So it's going to have 9 grams of borax, 12 grams of silica.
2 to 3 times for the borax and silica?
Yes.
Sorry, just a second. 2 to 3 times sample weight.
Yeah.
Plus
Yeah, hold on a second, Jeff. I'm going to have him move and then I will explain this to you. Okay?
Okay. Enter. The charge is the ore, yeah. Just
Yeah,
a
the
second.
charge is the ore. Okay. So for instance, when I'm doing my resin, I've got a 12.5 gram charge. That's 12.5 grams of dried resin. It's going to have 6 grams. It's going to have 9 grams of borax, 12 grams of silica, 25 grams of soda ash, and then your litharge and your silver, whatever you're inquarting for your silver, is going to be in there. Your silver inquart, by the way, should be 3 times the expected amount of gold or more. Okay? So if you think, like if you know, as I know, that your ore, that your charge should have, say, as an example, a 0.5 gram of gold in it, then you're going to want to inquart 1.5 grams of silver. Okay? That's why it's a good thing to have assays here. Now, once you've got it in there, it's going to go through its full fusion. When it's been at 1750 for long enough to get all of your lead fully reduced, you're going to want to take it out and stir it very vigorously.
If it mentioned any litharge,
everybody knows that.
no.
Okay, if you're using litharge, okay, if you are doing an assay like I do and you're using litharge, you're going to want to get it to 1750, and after it's been at 1750 for about 20 minutes or so, you're going to want to pull it out and stir it pretty vigorously by, with your tongs, agitating your crucible. When your slag has fully taken things up and your fusion's complete, you should not see dark swirlies in there. If you see dark swirlies, you got to put it in for longer because there's still ore or dirt or whatever that is being dissolved. If you agitate it completely and it is moving smoothly and you're not seeing dark swirlies in it, you have a nice uniform bright orange color, I put mine back in and I get it up to about 775 or 780 because you want your flux.
7 or 17?
1775 or 1780 because you want your flux to get to a superfluid state. When you pour it, it's going to pour like water. And you will actually see if you've got lead in there or you've got metal in there, you may actually see your metal button fall out in the middle of this. And that's how you get a nice clean pour. Because the soda ash really does get things very, very liquid. And yes, Alex, on that matter, that I consult the book on, because if you're doing actual assays, the way I am now, if you're doing actual assays, the first one you're going to do is going to be a reduction potential assay to find out whether your ore is what they call acid or basic. And you basically use the same ratios that he already typed in for you, but you put a specific amount of litharge in there and you put in a specific amount of a reducer like charcoal, flour, or argol to try to achieve a 30-gram button. That's an assay button. Is going to be 30 grams with the lead and everything caught up in it. And while most ores are pretty close to neutral, there are some that are more basic, there are some that are more acid. And if they're more basic or acid, then you have to adjust by adding like a little fluorspar into your flux, for instance.
How much litharge would you use for a 30-gram button?
To reduce, Bear asked how much litharge to get a 30-gram button. All the book says on this is an excess of litharge, but the tables that they used showed that they were basically using about 40 to 60 grams of litharge, sometimes up to 120 grams of litharge, to run a 1 assay ton sample. But, you want to end up with a 30-gram button. Ed, I think the dollar value of gold, the one difference I can see between the dollar value of gold and the arbitrary value of a petrodollar is gold, on the other hand, is connected to things in the real world. It's like silver is connected to things in the real world. We know that it costs, on average, X amount of dollars to get X amount of gold or silver out of the ground. Then it's a question of how it is used and how much demand there is for it. If you get back to a sound money standard and the open free market practices that by nature go with the sound money standard, then the value of something is all the market will bear. So for certain types of gold, you may see an extremely high price. For other types of gold, you may not. I mean, things are only worth what someone will pay for them. You can have an average dollar value, and in a sense, that's what your spot price is. Because your spot price, in theory and somewhat in practice, the spot price is sort of a global average of what is sort of a global average that is somewhere in the neighborhood of how much it costs to get from rock in the ground to round in the hand, or rock in the ground to bar in the hand, with a few dollars profit thrown in. This is something that gets discussed a lot on Wall Street Silver, because everybody's like, well, how can the miners afford to mine the silver? Considering the majority of the silver is a co-product from copper mines, that drives down that global average cost per ounce. Because while a primary silver mine, it may cost you $35 an ounce to get from rock to round, if it's a co-product from a copper mine, they may be able to pull it out of their solutions all day for $2 an ounce. That is one of the most fascinating aspects of mine economics and metal values, because you can have mine A right here, and a half a mile away have mine B, and mine A's costs maybe 3 times mine B's costs getting the same materials because of how the rock varies. We've seen that in the project we're on now, which is absolutely ridiculous. Well, the thing is, Alex, I don't really worry about a doomsday scenario. I really don't. Gold and silver are for building back again after the Mad Max thing is calmed down and you're rebuilding a civilization, so to speak. During the Mad Max thing, a lot of people will still be using fiat. Look at the Weimar Republic. During the Weimar Republic, their fiat was worthless, as in 10 million Deutschmarks for a loaf of bread. The prices on things would raise 4 or 5 times during the course of a single day. Yet people were still collecting the fiat by the barrel to go down to get a loaf of bread. Even if they had gold and silver, they were saving the gold and silver for after. In Zimbabwe, they still spend those now $100 trillion notes they have. In Venezuela, people are still spending their money. In the Confederate United States, during the Civil War, even after the Confederate gold was stolen and disappeared, people were still buying Confederate bonds with gold, and they were still spending Confederate dollars. And during the Reconstruction, they were still spending Confederate dollars. They were still spending paper. People have an inordinate amount of faith in paper because our educational system has bred that over the past several generations. That started when I was a kid. And that's the thing, is people no longer think of gold and silver as what they are, money. They've always been money. They've been money for 5,000 years. So was copper. As a matter of fact, bronze was as well. Can you imagine bronze coins? There were plenty of them. And yeah, the Mad Max time is kind of sort of here. And salt was a currency as well, yes. Anything can become a currency. The difference between a currency and a money, so to speak, is a currency is a transaction for the moment, but it can be a consumable, like salt is a consumable. Wheat can be a currency. Wheat has been a currency more than once in a barter economy. Cigarettes can be a currency. Anything that is consumable can be a currency. Money, as a system of storing wealth, is by definition something that isn't consumable, so to speak. I mean, yeah, we could go back to using salt as a currency, and I wouldn't object to it at all. Corn would be an absolutely horrible number one food crop. Corn is extremely hard on the soil. It requires a ridiculous amount of fertilizers. It's very, very temperamental stuff. The new corns that they've developed have some of the highest yields that have ever been found in human history, but they also require tremendous amounts of chemical fertilizers. And in case anybody missed it, the United States imports over 85% of the chemical feedstocks used to make chemical fertilizers. And one of the two largest chemical fertilizer producing plants in the United States burned down like last year sometime. And another one burned down the year before that. So, yeah. Yeah, that would be a currency, Tricky. Rice is exactly, it's a really strong producer per acre, massive quantities of water, tons of labor. The other problem with any of your plant products is they do not deliver bioavailable nutrition. Okay? Just because something says it has 300% the daily requirement of vitamin C, for instance, if your body can only absorb and put to use 10% of that, then you ain't getting shit out of it. This is the problem with vitamin A, in fact. A whole lot of people do not have the chemistry or the genetics to effectively convert the precursors of vitamin A that you find in carrots, etc., into usable by your body vitamin A. So they're sitting here eating something that says it's got 500% the daily requirement of vitamin A. Do you ever wonder why some people turn orange when they eat carrots? Well, that's why. Because they can't, their bodies are not using that stuff. Throughout our evolutionary history, plants were the things you ate when real food were not around. Now, I personally love my veggies. I do not count on my veggies for nutrition. I would never count on my veggies for nutrition. Ever. Period. It ain't happening here. Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of water, but it can be reused. Alex, you better watch out what kind of rocks you lick doing that. I mean, that doesn't work well. But yeah, basically, you want to make sure before you do any pours, if you're doing any assays or you're smelting things, you always want to make sure that once you get it to a fully liquid state, so it's really going around and it's not acting like honey, you want to bring it up that extra 20 to 30 degrees and hold it there for a few minutes, because it will, when you shake it again, it will move like water more than, like, say, melted butter or honey. Yeah, don't eat the yellow snow and don't lick the yellow rocks. But I'll let him get back to you guys. People are talking about licking rocks for nutrients, Bear.
I'll show you how to do it later.
Yeah. You don't have rocks anymore, remember?
Okay. Okay, Tricky. Actually, if you don't use too much HCl, it should be fine, because the limestone should neutralize it. Change the sign. Change the signs everywhere. Signs. Oh, yeah. No reason you couldn't make lemonade out of hydrochloric acid if you dilute it enough. One thing you got to be careful of is when you're making lemonade equivalents in a laboratory, make sure you label them properly. Trust me. Anyhow, where are we at? I was napping. Don't drink things in a lab.
Unless they're in sealed cans.
Fishing? What's this about fishing? Is he saying fishing for survival?
Yeah, we were discussing Mad Max Doomsday ship.
Yeah. Well, fishing and hunting like that, yeah. In a Mad Max situation, yeah, they're going to quickly get depleted.
This is why we home can so much food.
You may be out of time there? Okay. Take care, Keith. Oh, so let's see. I guess I'll get a hold of Lauren tomorrow. Oh, really? Well, how much exactly are you talking about? Because if you're going to fix it, we might be able to make a deal here. Alex. So, I say the original plan was to head out to the mine tomorrow afternoon, but I think that's probably better than anything I've ever done, blind dude. But if I can't get those rear spring bushings done, I think I'll wait till maybe Wednesday. I'll talk to Lauren and see what his situation is. I'd rather wait a day. That vibration's getting more significant, and I hate pulling a heavy trailer. I did get the tire fixed, and it was worth waiting a few days for it, because it was a $200 tire that had road hazard, so I got it for free. The ones I like, Chris, I had a friend years ago named Linda, and for perfectly legitimate reason, my phone number can be associated with her. So every once in a while I'll get a bill collector, may I speak to Linda Carver? And I'm like, no, she's been dead for years now. That usually shuts them up pretty quick. Oh, dearie. But anyhow, so tomorrow, I think we'll go out there and try and smelt that residue, little one. Does that sound like a plan?
We can if you want to.
We should. It shouldn't take even as long as a resin smelt because it's already finely ground. You shouldn't have to be breaking down any resin, so it should go fairly quick. I have no idea, Alex, what you're talking about. RTX 4090s? I have no clue. But yeah, we can try that and see what we got in terms of the precipitates on that. I have no idea. It's about electrons. Me and electrons don't get along, Alex. I barely tolerate them and they barely tolerate me. So anyhow, we'll probably try that tomorrow. Did you pour a smelt today or not? Yours was just
Mine was just making beads.
making beads. Okay, yeah.
We made that big one.
Yeah. So I say you can see about smelting that. And see what we get out of that, because I'd really like to have an idea whether or not that elution is working at all.
And then we should dry the resin and smelt that. At some point.
Yeah, at some point, yes. But we still got a lot last time. We could probably drain this stuff off and make another batch and try eluting it again. Yeah, Jeff, there's a lot of things around here. You can buy, trees pretty cheap. Little one, I probably should have gone to the restroom while you were chatting with everyone.
Oh, well, that's your fault.
Well,
HODL.
What?
HODL. Hold on for dear life.
No, they're just going to have to talk to themselves for a minute.
I'm coming. Good grief, Bear.
A Z80, huh? Whatever a Z80 is. I know what a 240Z is. My brother had one.
Hi, everybody. An interesting Telluride gold mine, huh? Alex, they couldn't pay me enough to switch to Windows 11 either. I don't even like Windows 10. I don't want anything but Windows 3.1, but you can't get 3.1 anymore. That's just freaking ridiculous. Windows is ridiculous. It's just, yuck. Yeah, basically things are going well in the lab, by the way. They're discussing computers.
It'd be nice to have a centrifuge that didn't require a manual start, huh?
Hey, I like my centrifuge. It's Lauren's centrifuge that I'm borrowing, and it's a very nice centrifuge. Yeah, it's got a quirk. I can live with that. One of the few things in the lab that hasn't broken yet. Just saying.
Yep. Anyhow, so that's where we're at the moment. And we really need to get out to the mine and get another batch of ore. But I think we're going to be pressed for time. We'll see how fast I can screen some out of that dump. You can build a home desktop computer now that draws nearly a kilowatt.
Good Lord.
Yes, that's crazy stuff. Now, how many eco-loons have one? Oh, my goodness. Yep. Oh. Yeah, it cracks me up when these protesters glue themselves to stuff. It's like, oh, really? Whack. Tough to be you, doesn't it? Whack. Perhaps you shouldn't have glued yourself to something so that you're a sitting duck. Didn't need any paperwork on that one. Yeah, that's getting pretty ridiculous, isn't it, Alex? Jeez. Oh. On the other hand, if you just take the exhaust, you can use it as a good dryer, you know. Oh. Oh, so the house I grew up in was terrible, huh? I don't know. I've been in houses that had like, 2 outlets per room.
Do you remember the Adobe hovel?
No, I can't remember the Adobe hovel, the one where they've got where the white wires were the hot and the black wires were the neutral.
And don't forget the wiring from the 1940s, and not a level or plumb or square anywhere in the building, and
Termites.
wall-to-wall termites, and the squirrels that you allowed to breed in the attic, the crawl space.
In my case, no, it wasn't aluminum wire. They hadn't made aluminum wire by the time the wiring got put in that house. Yeah, it was. I think they basically just furred the walls and put it in there because it was Adobe. Wow, that sounds not to code, Alex. The builder, initial occupant, scrounged up spare wiring from jobs he worked and twisted together copper and aluminum wiring in the walls because it was too short. Blind Dude says, every aluminum wired house I rewired had burn marks on the backside of the sheetrock. Scary crap. Yeah, sounds like it. There's a reason they don't use aluminum wiring anymore. It works well on power lines and stuff, but not in house wiring. Yep. Yeah. The other thing, you can use the bare aluminum wire as a high line. The claim owner had some laying around in his boneyard there,
Jack 40.
and so we use it for the high line. Yeah, it sounds about right, Alex. I'm trying to think. When I was a little kid, it was in Tucson. I don't remember it ever being that cold. We were lower middle class, but it wasn't too bad, and it was a commercially built house, and um, so I don't remember any of that. Yeah, if you also want to have some fun, Alex, especially on an older car, but even in a newer one, that have the sparks, the coils on the spark plugs. Okay, just pull the coil off of it, and then take your graphite pencil and draw a line from the base of the plug to the tip and put it back on. Wow, it's got a bad miss in it. Uh, yeah. And when an older one, like with my truck, you take the distributor cap off and draw a line from one of the posts to the center one, or no, from one of the posts to where it clamps onto the distributor, and it's not visible. You got a dead short across that one, and you can't see it. Is the stream still going? Yeah. What's up, blind dude?
Hey, blind dude.
I think he's losing YouTube connectivity. So sometimes people are out somewhere and the YouTube just decides to be obnoxious. Chris is like that all the time. You refreshed, huh? Well, I did too, just a few minutes ago. Anyhow, so I say we shall see what we shall see this next coming week. We did have fun up on top of that hill. That was pretty. So I say that's likely to be interesting this summer. I suspect we're going to be up there for 4 or 5 days doing exploration and sampling, trying to figure out what the heck's up there. But I would imagine we're going to take a trailer and the quad with us. You know, that there's enough area to cover there that it makes perfect sense rather than the truck. You too, Shaggy. Have you considered enabling YouTube subscriptions so people can support the channel with a monthly payment?
I haven't looked at it yet.
Haven't looked at that. As a general rule, I'm not real happy with YouTube right now. But I'm not too happy with Patreon right now either. I wish they would 30%. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's a lot. I just wish these information services would remain services and stop trying to decide who can say what, because they say, first of all, the best antidote to falsehoods is good argument, not shutting them down. Then it doesn't get, and then the observer doesn't hear the counter argument because they never hear the argument in favor of the craziness or whatever. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, Alex. It's ridiculous. As far as I'm concerned, if YouTube wants to do that to somebody and it turns out they were not saying anything wrong, YouTube should pay a hell of a fine, because they're breaking their own terms of service. Well, you're spreading misinformation, but then what's misinformation? Whatever they say is misinformation. Accepted truth changes over time. Okay. I remember when I was in astronomy class. The astronomer, who was a professional astronomer teaching it, said, we will never be able to resolve other stars because, it's just impossible, to do so.
Pluto used to be a planet.
And then they figured out ways of doing it. So I get really tired when somebody says, well, we need to shut down misinformation. Well, who decides what's misinformation?
Well, Pluto used to be a planet. Now they're claiming it's not a planet.
Well, no, that's purely definitional. And you can do that.
It's still a planet.
I would call it a planet too, but again, they made a new definition for what is a planet and what isn't a planet. What's a minor planet? What's a major planet? What's a planetoid? What's a meteoroid? And things like that.
They're full of crap.
And I forget, I think a minor planet has to achieve a spherical shape through gravity or something like that. Possibly, Paul, don't know. I agree, Alex. Resolve means to be able to see a detail. Resolution from an astronomical standpoint, if you have 2 points of light, how close together can they be and you still see 2 points of light as opposed to 1 point of light? That's resolution. And so when when you're talking about resolving stars, he was talking about actually getting an image of a star that's not just a point of light, but actually has some kind of detail. And now they can do it. As a matter of fact, they're resolving, black holes at, 100 million miles or some god awful, 100 million light years or some gosh awful thing. But they hadn't thought at that time of interferometry, space telescopes, stuff like that. It's or adaptive optics. That's another one. It used to be, well, a space telescope's always going to be more precise, get better resolution than a ground-based telescope. Not if you use interferometry and adaptive optics. The new telescopes change the shape of the secondary mirror over 100 times a second to cancel out the atmospheric disturbances, and combine that with 2 mirrors 100 feet apart, which is what the large binocular telescope on Mount Graham is in Arizona. It's got better vision than the Hubble Space Telescope. It's a lot cheaper because it's on Earth. That makes life a lot simpler. Yeah, that was an infrared telescope, and that's why they had to run it up high to get above the atmosphere. And that was the purpose. Now with the James Webb Space Telescope, they got much better vision in the infrared.
That's Lars's department.
The SNR is poorer. Terrestrial telescopes with adaptive optics have better resolving power due to the larger size, but the SNR is poorer. Not sure what it was called. I'm not sure because it's the LBT, Large Binocular Telescope.
Lucifer.
But I think they did nickname it Lucifer. It's Big Thunder is the Vatican, by the way. Good night, Lars. Signal to noise ratio, more atmospheric scattering. Yeah, on the other hand, they also have a lot more light gathering power too. So that, you're doing spectroscopy or things like that, that comes in handy too. That's why the Keck is used mainly for spectroscopy, because it's got the huge mirror. And so it gathers a lot of light so you can break it up and still measure it. Yeah. The Event Horizon Telescope, exactly. That's how they image the um, black hole in the center of our galaxy and the black hole in M81, but it was radio telescopes. Again, because of dust and stuff, you needed longer wavelengths to get through the haze and actually be able to see anything. That was funny because M81 was actually easier to resolve than our own galaxy, primarily because it's so big, things were moving slower. So, yeah, Chris, it's amazing to me. I've seen stuff from backyard telescopes that rival stuff I saw from the Mount Palomar 200 inch in the 60s. Amazing. Yeah, Alex, it's usually false color, but sometimes it's true color. You know, you have to look at the individual photograph and see whether it's true color or false color. But yeah, they quite often use false color to get better, um, to contrast things, make things a lot easier to see. You know, but it's like sometimes they're true color too. You just got to look. Yeah, these, I say, I've seen backyard telescopes like with 12, 18-inch Schmidt Cassegrains that, you know, are better pictures than I used to see from the Hale 200-inch at Mount Palomar. Yeah, and so they play with it in post processing. Oh, oh. Anyhow, so let's say that's about what we're doing. Still haven't had the big breakthrough. Well, we don't know if we've had the big breakthrough. As if we can get, what do you think, Chris? If we can elute the gold into that um, sodium hydroxide chlorate salt solution, we could probably precipitate it if we needed to. Uh, I say, we'll see what the lab says, see what the concentrations are. If we're up in the thousands of parts per million, then we're on our way. Um, we could take that and um, I'm sure we can figure out some way to either electrowin or electroprecipitate. Is that the proper word? Electroprecipitate? And then recycle the solution back to the resin. I don't see any reason why that wouldn't work just fine. Um, but first, I got to see if is it working at all. And if it didn't work at room temperature with the formula that we used, I think the next step would be to try electro dissolution. I mean, basically, put it in that little stainless steel bowl we have, put a fabric liner in there, and then put the cathode above it, and some kind of um, circulation. You know, I mean, I've got all the stuff to do it on a much larger scale. I mean, I've got about a 1 cubic foot uh, electroplating cell. I got the little pump with a filter. I've got, you know, a quartz heater. You know, I say all kinds of stuff. And I think that if possible, it would be nice if we could do it at room temperature without electrical pushing. Then I'd like to just leave the resin in the cartridges and set up a cartridge holder and circulate it through the resin that way, through the cartridge, then to the electroplating cell, then a reservoir, and then back, and just pump it. And I think that would make life simple to just leave those, leave the resin in the cartridges and just move it from one holder to another. I think that would be sweet. But we'll just have to see. First, we got to see if the solution actually dissolves the gold out of the resin. So far, the resin that we've got is still white. I mean, still red. It seems to be getting less so, but I think we'd have to keep flushing depleted solution through it to get it to work. But that's my ultimate plan. If we can do that, that would be nice. And I don't know about the electrode. I'd like to actually plate it. That would be nice. But I'm not sure if that's going to happen. uh, it's possible. Also, sulfuric acid might. The literature showed a pre-soak in sulfuric pulled out all the mercury. Pre-soak in hydrochloric and salt was used to elute the silver, but we think that it would be nice to just get the silver and the gold in one pass. We should see with sulfuric. It did not in the testing. In the testing, it only pulled out the mercury and a slight bit of the silver. So, and none of the gold. Not our testing. I mean, the laboratory that did the other testing. So, gold is soluble in nitric if there's chloride ions available, which is why you have to be very careful when you're using nitric. It doesn't matter where the chloride ions come from. I mean, aqua regia, the chloride ions come from hydrochloric acid, but salt would work. Any chloride ion and nitric acid is a real danger when it comes to gold, unless you want to dissolve the gold. So we'll see. No, actually, it wasn't complexing in nitric, Alex. It may have been precipitating, though, because what's his name? Tricky said that it was the middle phase that got most of the precipitates when he was doing it. That would certainly be a good idea, Alex. But considering the lixivant that we're using is 0.75% sodium hypochlorite, 5%, not 5%, 5%, 5 grams per liter, 0.5% sodium hydroxide, and 30% sodium chloride. That would be kind of, hard to get rid of those chloride ions. So that's why I didn't try dissolving the steel wool in nitric acid. I would need to try dissolving some of that steel wool unused steel wool in the hydrochloric and see what happens. Matter of fact, I should probably see about getting some more steel wool. I only got a little bit there. Okay, I need to get those.
Did we bring trash bags over? Because it wasn't in
Yes.
my trash can.
Yes, they're over there. They're up on the top
Put the
shelf.
notepads where we remembered to bring them over.
What?
Put a notepad where we remember to bring it over.
Good point. Get out of here. Okay, it's in the to-go.
I do not want to hear you screeching.
Yes, Alex, there is supposedly a lot of gold in the scratch gravels. There's a cool blue spinel scarn south of Helena. Okay. Don't know what that means, Alex.
I don't know where.
It's a metamorphosed roof pendant. I bet you I know what that means.
I want to see it.
The scratch gravel hills, which are right over there, about a mile, is there's some hills cover, I don't know, a little more than a square mile, something like that, maybe a mile and a half square, where they're called the scratch gravels because all you had to do to find gold was just scratch around in the gravel. And that's why they're called the scratch gravels. It's the scratch gravel hills. It's not a particular geological type of gravel. But yeah, I haven't personally talked to people, but I've talked to people who know people who get nuggets there. There's one particular place where they would, scrape it gently with a dozer and then go out there with a metal detector and then scrape it with the dozer again. They're still getting nuggets, last I heard. So anyhow, that's what it's all about. I say they're just those hills. As a matter of fact, if you look at some of my live streams, the what do you call it? Thumbnail. Let's see. Let me go to it. Let's see. Where is that? That not quite. The one that shows the mountains with snow on them in the distance, that's the Big Belt Mountains. Just to the right of that would be the scratch gravels. I did a video, what was that, a year and a half ago? And I was up on a mountain looking at Helena and Lake Helena and stuff while I was staking a claim. I was staking the claims on the scratch gravel hills, And so that's why they're called that. We live in a very pretty area here. Everywhere you look, it's pretty stuff. This morning was really nice because Mount Helena's right there. Notice how I'm pointing up. That's probably about the top of the mountain there, angled wise. It had just been snowed on. All the trees were white and everything. Very, very pretty. Very, very nice this morning. I imagine everything's pretty much melted out there now, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see what we got. Yeah, porch is all melted. Yeah, 35 degrees. Porch is melted. Yeah. Ugh. Japan Law Twins? What are Japan Law Twins? Sounds like something that would voice to text. Let's see. Let me see what the weather's. Okay, down there by Montana B. Tomorrow, 48 and 30, partly cloudy. Wednesday, 47 and 25, sunny. Thursday, 47 and 30, sunny. Friday, 50 and 30, sunny. Saturday, 58, 36, sunny. Sunday, 55, 38, sunny. Yeah. Let's say we got a good trip weather-wise. Say I just got to get that truck running. Say because we don't want to work on the weekends at the ranch. So like to be back Thursday, but we could leave Wednesday morning first thing. Get out there, get set up, screen a bunch, and get back on Thursday. I don't see a problem with that if all we're doing is screening. Couldn't do anything else. Couldn't get rid of those pack rat middens down the hole. But that's okay. Oh, okay. So it's a quartz crystal geometry, huh? Good night, Rock. Bedtime for this bonzo, huh? Yeah, thank you. I say it's winding down, that's for sure. I know it's midnight your place, pretty much. Alrighty. Anyone else got any questions or anything? I agree. It's getting kind of late here. I'm a bit tired. Oh, I presume Jim and Lauren have gone to bed already because they were working all day long, probably in the cold and snow.
Yeah, I'm sure they have decamped.
No, they were still there this evening.
No, I mean they have decamped from our live stream.
Yeah, okay. I thought you meant decamped as in left the camp.
No.
The precipitation, I was taking video of it today when the camera ran out of chip space. So I've deleted some stuff. And yes, I will have a video up on it. Yeah. Thank you, Paul. I think it'll precipitate somewhere, but I don't think it's going to precipitate here. Oh. Okay, everybody. I think we're going to call it a night. So thanks for showing up, everyone. Appreciate all the input. And we'll do what we can. You're welcome, Jeff. And we'll go from there. But nobody's got any more questions or whatever. You too, Alex. Thanks for all your input. You too, Blind. So I guess I'll call it a night. Happy prospecting and keep it safe out there.